We are live.
Are we?
All right. We're live. So now we can talk about REO Speedwagon to the world. The speed.
Okay.
So I'd say my favorite REO Speedwagon song is, what is it? Oh God, the one about the guy who rides up in a Mercedes Benz. Oh God, all of a sudden I can't remember it. It's the song about the guy who's such a jerk, but you should hang on to him just for when he matures. It's off that same album from 1980. Let us say, what was it again? He's a sweet talking stud who will melt your girl's heart with his pout. He's the kind of lover that the ladies dream about. He's hot. Yes, he is. He's got plenty of cash. He got plenty of friends. He drives women wild. Don't let him go.
That's it for today, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Don't let him go is the name. That's my favorite REO Speedwagon song. But it's actually a good song. It's rocking.
I think I know that one.
Yeah, you'd know that one. But the lyrics are just so ridiculous. I love it.
I have no idea what you just did.
you don't know your REO Speedwagon. You're too young.
I do know REO Speedwagon, who's a car from the 1920s. There was a guy in Argentina.
I feel old now.
There was a guy in Argentina. He did a racing special from it, and he won lots of Argentinian local races.
Now we're talking about the band from the 1970s and 1980s.
No, from the 1970s. I'm a disco guy.
Paulo.
Also, Jean-Michel Jarre.
Friends don't let friends listen to disco.
Yes, they do. And that's why I like 90s commercial trends.
What's your favorite disco song?
Spacer.
Spacer. I don't think I know that one.
From Sheila B. Devotion. It was one of the projects that was produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, the guys from Chic.
Boy, Nile Rodgers produced a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Chic. Were they the ones who did Freak Out?
Yeah.
Les Chic, Les Freak Out. Yeah, I know a little disco, but not a ton.
The thing is, did you see? When you start looking at doing bit digging to understand where some house music samples come from, you start going deeper into disco, and that's where you find the songs that are not poppy. They're the ones that actually have decent instrumentals and go for 7 minutes 30 seconds and are only available in rare 12 inches.
That's the way it is with a lot of different genres of music. The best stuff is not what you end up hearing on the radio.
Oh yeah. Well, who listens to the radio anymore? So what does it matter?
I listen to NPR. I listen to NPR when I'm driving in the car, but.
I can't tell. I gave up on commercial radio like in the early 90s, I think. Back when people still listened to radio even. So did anyone get any good comics this week?
I got some books. See, I got another hardcover of the Valerian series that I didn't have, so now I have them all except number 6, which evidently can't be had for love or money these days.
Where are you getting those from?
One of them I got from Amazon, and the one of them I had to order from In Stock Trades.
Okay.
They actually have a decent price on it too. They pack their stuff really well, but they use packing peanuts, and I hate packing peanuts.
Oh, packing peanuts are annoying. Comic Crack is here. How you doing, Terrence?
Problem. And then I got
have you ever got the edible packing peanuts?
No, never have.
Hold on, I think something's giving me an alert around here.
Okay.
When I'm done doing the 13, no, not 13. I have the 13 complete. Largo Winch. Probably should go get the Valerian collection, because when we have the newspaper collections, that's when we can get a bunch of French albums all at once,
right?
And for dirt cheap, like €5 a story.
Oh, glorious In Stock Trades. I think that's one of the. I was discussing this with Barry Dutter. Used to work with him at Marvel.
I know that name. Yeah.
And he deals in comics now. He lives out in California, and he wheels and deals in comics. He usually buys collections and then sells them on Facebook.
Right.
And I think he just recently, and he usually posts, he posts the stuff he gets, he posts the stuff he doesn't get.
Mm-hmm.
So he posted, I think, so, he goes on Craigslist and finds stuff. He goes in local garage sales, estate sales. So on Craigslist, he saw a woman was selling a whole bunch of trades, but she wanted like $3,000 for them.
Right.
And he was saying, about 500 was about as much as he as a reseller could go to in order. So, he turned him down and walked away, but he posted a picture of this stuff. And I said, it's amazing to me. It's like, it is actually tough, except for certain ones that people want. And he was like, I could have made some money off this. He's like, if I'd spent $3,000, I would have made $500 off of it. And it would have taken me 3 years to make $500.
Right.
Because even though he said there were some valuable trades in there, but and hardcovers, but finding the right
buyers,
person to buy that $100 out of print hardcover is not easy.
No,
and I was like, you know what? I know what he means, because it's like there's so many places where you can get cheap trades these days that you can't even sell a trade for $5 on eBay.
Right.
Because why is someone going to buy a random trade on eBay for $5 when they can get it from somewhere else and not have to pay shipping on that trade?
Well, I noticed just a few days ago, Sleepy Reader put up a post where he got an issue of Fantastic Four, and it was $4.99.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm like, ouch.
That's right. That's the new one. 20 pages, $4.99. That's the new Marvel price, maybe. Oh, Comic Crack. What's up? I want to give that Alan Moore book you showed. I always liked it. I have A Small Killing. That was one of my favorite Alan Moore books. I haven't read it in a long time, but I always say that I'm worth hunting down. It's on my shelf. I'll have to pull it off and read it. I'm not a big Watchmen fan. Like, I'm not even sure not that I think it's bad. It just doesn't really interest me that much. Like Watchmen, I'm not even sure is in my top 10 of Alan Moore books. It's like I always say I like A Small Killing better than I like Watchmen. Yeah. It's true. When I was selling comics at a local comic, I had a hell of a time selling trades for $5 a pop. As soon as you bought it new, cut that price. Yeah. It's like you $5 for a trade is like the high end you buy trades on at a like con or something. So it's tough getting rid of them.
A lot of it depends on what book it is too.
Yeah, there are exceptions, of course. There's high price out of print stuff.
That's evidently that's all the stuff I want.
Yeah.
Like the Essential Godzilla, which is the only way you can get the entire Godzilla series in one sitting. Or like when Marvel did the Essential Conan, which was for a long time the only way you could get all the first 25 issues of Conan in one sitting. There are a few like that.
The Essential Conan is also a big seller with Robert E. Howard collectors as well, not just comic fans.
Yeah.
But they have
getting all that art in black and white is probably a lot more interesting than with the coloring from the time.
Yeah, actually, I didn't like the recoloring. When Dark Horse reprinted, when Dark Horse got the Conan license, and they reprinted in hardcover the Barry Windsor Smith Conans, I picked those up, and they were okay. But the two weird things about it was the matter of fact, I forget which colorist. Somebody did you can look it up on the internet. A comparison of the new coloring from the Dark Horse ones and the old coloring from the comics.
There's several different.
Yeah, they changed a lot of it.
Yeah, there's several different articles about that kind of thing.
But the weird thing to me was Dark Horse prints their hardcovers without dust covers, which is fine with me. I'm not that big a dust cover fan. But I swear, you know how you bind books in leather? The color of this one made it made it look like it was bound in human skin. It was just this like peach light skin color.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. I think I have a copy of that one. Yeah.
I'm like, this is kind of creepy. That always creeped me out. The color, I don't know, probably a plastic they bind
it's
it
like
in.
this off beige kind of color.
Yeah. I was like, wow, you do some blood splatters on this and it'll really be creepy. Yeah, but I still have the essential Conans. Those because I sold off my Dark Horse hardcovers because I wasn't a fan of the coloring. But I think I got the essential ones back when I was still at Marvel. So
those are quite collectible these days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like looking at the Barry Windsor Smith stuff in black and white. Though I just had to talk my friend out of it wasn't hard. He for I'll have to do a video. Do you know the Red Nails artist edition? Though it's not an artist edition.
I know which book you're talking about.
It must be 5 years ago now. It's kind of in line with the artist edition ones, but it's not actually
same size.
Yeah, same size, same idea, different publisher. But my friend Ed bought it when it came out. I didn't buy that one, but he was I liked it, but I didn't buy it. But he was disappointed in it because it was printed on glossy paper, unlike the matte paper that like IDW uses that mimics the actual original art paper.
Right.
And it was also there was only one image per spread. It was like they had
every other page. Right.
Yeah, every other page to pad out the page count, so you can only see one page at a time. And he was kind of really disappointed with that. And my friend Bunch just last week was like thinking about getting that. He's like, I really can't afford it. Talk me out of it. I'm like, that's not hard. Ed doesn't like it. He bought it. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind having it myself, but it's not the top of my priority I would have.
I wouldn't mind having
it. Edition.
But I think it's up to like $150, $175 now, and it's not really it's not worth that to me. Right. Do you have any artist editions, Paolo?
I have the not the artist edition, but something similar that IDW did with Rocketeer, where they shot from the original art.
So you have the artisan edition?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, that's
like the regular sized version of an artist edition. Shrunken down to like an 8.5 by 11 format or slightly bigger than that.
They did a few of those, though. I don't have the artist. My friend Ed has the artist edition of that too, but I have the recolored, the one that Laura Martin colored. That came out just before the artist edition. I think the Rocketeer one was their first artist edition, if I remember correctly.
It was, the first printing was that was.
Right before that,
by the time I came across the artisan edition, I thought I had missed out on getting it the first time around. I thought I wasn't gonna find it, and then I found it. Gotta pick it up now.
Yeah, that's true with that type of thing. If you see it and you can afford it at the time, you better go ahead and jump on it while the getting's good.
Let me see if I can run and find.
Yeah, I showed the artisan edition in an old video. I had the Brazilian graphic novel with the first story, and then I showed that, and I showed the artisan edition because it had the two complete stories that Dave Stevens did. Dave Stevens did. The first one was the one that was serialized all across those Eclipse comics, and trying to get all the individual issues just to read the Rocketeer stories is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
This came out right before the artist edition, I think. This is the Rocketeer.
I have that too.
The complete adventures. And I think it was recolored by Laura Martin, was it? Let me see. by Dave Stevens. Who recolored it? I have to put my glasses on to look. Yeah, recolored by Laura Martin. So the colors are very nice on it. And it's got all this art stuff in the back, too.
Yeah, that's a nice book.
Mm-hmm.
This came out right before the artist edition. Because when there's some nice layouts. Because when my friend Ed got the artist edition, I was like, what are you talking about? I thought he had got this. There's some nice layouts. And I was like, ooh. You know what was interesting about the Dave Stevens artist edition? On the later stuff, he had people help him on it, assist him.
Yeah,
and
quite a few.
Jaime Hernandez was one of them. So it's like all of a sudden you'll get to one or two pages and you'll see like Jaime Hernandez women in it. And I'll be like, oh, that's obviously.
Yeah, he had a lot of different people helping him. Ink stuff, yeah. Kaluga.
Yeah. Right.
Different people.
Some good stuff in there.
Yes, indeed. And
the new comic shop news this week has got the Shaolin Cowboy on.
I was getting ready to ask if that was Jeff Darrow. But yeah.
Yep. Not that there's any new Shaolin Cowboy coming out, but Dark Horse for the first time will be putting out trade paperbacks of the Shaolin Cowboy. I guess it's always been in hardcover. I did not know that.
I don't know if they did a hardcover of those or not.
Yeah, the one I have, I got the last one, I think, and it's a hardcover. It's the only Shaolin Cowboy I have. So I'm guessing they came out as issues, and then they collected it in a hardcover. And it's a pretty crappy hardcover. It's one of those hardcovers where you can tell the front of it is cardboard.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's kind of like all hardcovers are really cardboard. But
sort of,
yeah, but they're coated but for these ones it's like you're like, wow, this is cardboard.
Gotcha.
Don't think they did a hardcover for the miniseries just for all. Yeah, I know. Well, it says here they didn't do trade paperbacks for any of them. Yeah, I know I got the latest one in hardcover. I don't know if they did them. Well, I think they said here that all of them have been out in hardcover. It says. And next year, for the first time ever, Dark Horse Books will publish Darrow's complete Shaolin Cowboy Odyssey in paperback. 3 paperback editions it'll be in. And I think before it says, while all 3 have previously been offered in hardcover, none of them have ever appeared in trade paperback. So I guess all 3 have been in hardcover. See, I only know the last one. Yeah, I think they mentioned Burly Man collected the first one, which, hold on, that's, I've got a Burly Man sticker right here. Because, Burly Man, I think they said they mentioned here it's the Wachowskis publishing company. And Spencer Lamb, who I used to work with at Marvel, who I just heard from, sent me the Matrix book. Remember when I showed that one off? And he sent some Burly Man stickers with him.
Nice. Yeah, we saw Jeff down at Heroes Con a few years ago, and since then he's moved back to France.
Yeah, that's a nice logo. I like that sticker. There's one, and I stuck one in my sketchbook that's the opposite. Hold on, let me show you that one. This one, that one's black, and there's one here. There we go, on white. I put stickers in the front of my sketchbook, so I put that one there. Though some years I don't get any stickers. This year I got some. Put that over there. Let's see. And then they have in here, Marvel is doing Fortnite covers. I didn't know Fortnite had characters. I've never played it. I thought that was one of those you fight each other games, but I guess they have avatars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, She-Hulk fighting some Fortnite avatar.
Yeah, I think it's just another ridiculous attempt at doing. Let's do something for the kids like. The kids like this a Fortnite thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we can charge $100 for them for being variants.
Yep.
For the kids.
Yeah. Hey, these variant collectors got to collect something. Then the rest of it is all order numbers.
Considering the name of it, it would be fun if they released it every 14 days.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like I just went to what I always look up in one of these when it's the numbers section is the Marvel True Believers that are the dollar comics that are being released. And it looks like it's Black Widow month. Yep, Black Widow. There's that Spider-Man issue with Black. I'll get that one for $1. That Spider-Man issue with Black Widow, that John Romita one.
Well, that's the first time that the Black Widow has a decent look. It's her uniform. The Silver Age version was terrible with the fishnets and the mask.
I've never heard anybody say fishnets are terrible.
They don't look professional. Now that we're used to seeing the Black Widow in a skin tight jumpsuit, the fishnet costume just looks
dated.
Not only that, it's like in bad taste.
We've got Black Widow in the Avengers. Did she join the Avengers?
She hangs around the Avengers for about on and off between issues 20 something and 100 and something, and then officially joins, and then immediately leaves, and then she only comes back around 300.
The Red Guardian showed up in like around issue 50 or something in the Avengers, right?
Yeah.
So he was there for that. Then we have Daredevil and Black Widow. That must be one of those Daredevil and Black Widow issues.
Yeah, I can't remember when it becomes Daredevil Black Widow. Around the 80s, I think.
Yeah, 89 or 87 or 85, something like that.
Is it less like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah. Black Widow and the Thing, that must be a Marvel 2-in-1, right?
Mm-hmm.
You must have teamed up with them at some time doing that.
There was a 4-issue running Marvel team up, which was drawn by John Byrne, I believe, where it was Spider-Man, Black Widow, Master of Kung Fu, and Nick Fury. And that's a pretty good story.
That's an interesting combination of characters.
Silver Samurai, where they were fighting, I think.
I think if it's not the first appearance, it's probably one of the first. That may be when I don't think he had joined up with Viper yet. But I think it was Silver.
Red Sonja was in that run too, I think. Spider-Man in that Byrne run and Marvel team up. I remember around issue 85 or 86 or something.
74, I believe.
74 was earlier than that? Okay.
Yeah.
Black Widow, Dark Star. I have no idea what that would be. I don't know who Dark Star is.
Dark Star was part of the other Russian group. There were two Soviet groups, the Supreme Soviets and the Soviet Super Soldiers. Dark Star was part of the Soviet Super Soldiers, and she joined the Champions when she tried to defect. And that guy with the hammer and sickle, Vanguard,
so it'd be
their brother. They're mutants, which is why they were in a different group.
Would that be an 80s book or a 90s book?
70s.
70s book. Was that old? Wow, I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all.
She was in the Champions, so it's 70s.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't remember them being in the same story, so it might be something in the Defenders.
Right. Black Widow, Red Guardian, that must be that Avengers.
It's probably in the Champions, because the Black Widow was the Champions leader.
Yeah, Dark Star's Vanguard's sister, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the team was Dark Star, Vanguard, and Ursa Major.
And the Red Guardian one must be the Silver Age Avengers issue that introduced the Red Guardian.
He was the leader of the Supreme Soviets with the Titanium Man,
right?
And the Vision counterpart called Sputnik. And who was the other guy? Radioactive Man? No, Radioactive Man was Chinese.
Man, I read the Champions. They were so boring, I don't remember them. Except for the Swarm at the end.
The final 4 or 5 issues were drawn by John Byrne, which means that finally... Because George Tuska did not know how to draw a skull. And Ghost Rider was on the team.
Red Dynamo. He was that Iron Man arm.
Crimson Dynamo, yeah.
Yeah, Crimson Dynamo, right. Then we've got True Believers, Yelena Belova. Is she the new...
Yeah, the second one from Marvel Knights.
Ah, okay. Then we've got True Believers introducing Black Widow. That must be her first appearance in Iron Man, I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that looks like better than the X-Men month this month, where I hardly bought anything.
No, for the first time since the 90s, they're putting the numbers on big crossovers. And X of Swords is part 1 of 22. So each comic costing $5, you have to commit to $110 to read a mega crossover with different writers and questionable quality overall.
I just saw Rob Liefeld complaining about that on Twitter. And I must say that's the first time I saw it. I was like, 1 of 22? He just put something like, what? No way. And he just like put a little shot of the 1 of 22 on the cover. I was like, wow.
Because he never did one. Not with so many parts. He did Extinction Agenda. That was 9 parts. Right. But by the time they started doing the 16-part crossovers in the 90s, they'd already all left to Found Image.
Right. That's a lot of parts.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'll show you some comics, some True Believers I got this week, which I pulled off the shelf. I picked up this one, which I thought was Captain Britain, but it's Saturnine. What is his name? Saturnine? Saturn 9. N-Y-N-E. Yes. The name's up here.
Yes, so Saturn that's 9. Probably from the Daredevil's run? Or a bit
before? This is all Marvel UK.
Yeah. So it's... No, Daredevils was the comic where Captain Britain appeared. That was the final book where he appeared. So first he had his own comic.
Right.
Then he had his own comic again. Then there was Marvel Superheroes, which was a weekly.
Right. That had a reprints and some new stuff.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's
the Alan Moore run. Yeah, the Alan Moore run. Yeah, that's it. The Alan Moore run starts in Marvel Superheroes and then moves to Daredevils.
There's the Red Guardian. That's probably the one they're reprinting.
Yeah.
For Black Widow month, which is funny because they just moved the Black Widow movie back. But
there's no point because the thing about the movies is that as long as you have the COVID restrictions, nobody will be able to make their money back on ticket sales.
Right. Yeah, I think this is Alan Davis, right? I don't see any credits. Early Alan Davis. I don't know who's inking him, but it's not as smooth as Alan Farmer. I think it's Alan Davis inking himself.
Might be Paul Neary.
No, it just says artist Alan Davis. So, and
right, but they didn't put inker credits. I think at the time with their own strips. They just said who wrote and drew.
Okay. Yeah, it's not the smooth Alan Davis we know now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, X of Swords. That's the new 22-part story.
Yeah.
22 parts. You've got to be kidding me. Whoops, I knocked down my... And then I would have ordered this, but I never saw it on my order sheet. I must have missed it. But luckily they had a shelf copy. And this is a $4 version. This isn't the dollar. This is the facsimile, so they charge you extra for, it's got the ads in it. Ooh.
You know what we could do? One of these days we could try reading the other stories in Tales of Suspense number 39.
Gundar.
The Barbarian. No.
Then we've got, what are the other ones? There's a Ditko one in here. The Last Rocket. I think there's.
I wonder if that's the adaptation of a Ray Bradbury story.
Yeah.
Those stories have kind of been memory hold, and people don't really pay attention to them.
No. Not in the least.
One thing that I always used to annoy me a couple of decades ago, and we talked about it. I remember we talked about it once in the news groups. Okay, what if I want Amazing Fantasy number 15 to read the other stories?
You can't have it.
You can't have it. No. I got to pay $5 for it.
That's why you get a reprint.
Was this originally printed this way? Here's the first part of the text story, and it continues all the way, like 8 pages later.
Yeah, it's not out of the ordinary. Yeah, because the issue that you got us to read had the same layout. There was the text story was divided into 2 different parts of the.
Story divided in parts?
Yeah.
I must have skipped over it. Then I got couple of first issues I picked up off the shelf. We got An Unkindness of Ravens by, who's this by? Dan Panosian, Mariana Ignazi, and Fabiano Mascola.
Is there an Edgar Allan Poe motif there?
No, it's more like a Salem witches motif.
Gotcha.
But it was really young readers. Well, not young readers, but maybe YA, young adults kind of thing. It's it all takes place in a high school. New girl moves into high school. There's the popular kids and the weirdo witch kids, and I certainly couldn't relate to it because she moved into this. Not that I've ever moved into a new high school, but it's like the popular kids wanted to join their group, and the weirdo witch kids wanted to join their group. Like on the first day of school, I'm like,
that doesn't happen in real life.
Talk to you on the first day of school. I can't relate to this at all. And then here are the weirdo witch kids who, the big reveal at the end was their magic. They got some sort of magic going on, which they give you in the description of the book. So it's like, why is that the big reveal at the end when it's in all the solicitations?
Right.
But it was solidly done, just not for 50-year-old guys. This should go to your, 16-year-old girls who don't even read comics. Then I got, this is the other one I got. The Autumnal. This is a Vault comic. The Autumnal by Krause, Sheehan, Wordy, and Campbell. It says on the back, what is it? From New York Times best-selling author Daniel Krause, The Shape of Water, Troll Hunters, and the Living Dead. I don't know him, but I get, what was The Shape of Water, that one that won the Oscar?
Yeah, that was a movie that was directed by Guillermo del Toro.
Okay, so I guess he wrote the original novelization of that, and now he's writing the Autumnal, which I liked the art. The art in it was okay, but it was kind of like the main problem I had with it was it's this mother and daughter once again moving into a town, and the town has some creepy secret. I have to say the end. The end sentence on this is on the back is what sold me on it. It says, comes a haunting vision of America's prettiest autumn. I was like, haunting vision of America's prettiest autumn? That's the weirdest sentence I've ever read. I got to know what that is.
That is a strange sentence.
So it's about this mother and daughter who move into this creepy town. The main problem was, man, I didn't like that mother. I think she was supposed to be the quirky outsider, but I just really thought she was a jerk. And it's like some of her behavior in this, I just felt sorry for her daughter. It's like, oh my goodness, you're going to be a mess when you grow up with a mother like that. So for me, it went from, quirky outsider to, have you ever met a person and you can just tell they're a little too weird and troubled, so you keep your distance?
Yep.
You're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to have
more than once.
I don't know if I want anything to do with this person. That's the feeling I got from the mother character in here.
Gotcha.
Which I don't think is what they were aiming for. So
you're saying that for you that the autumnal falls flat?
Falls flat. I mean, it wasn't bad. I have
got it.
Fall flat. Oh, God. I'm going to ignore your puns. He who would pun would pick a pocket.
Well, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of pontification.
Then I got what I did. I have no idea if this is the last issue of 20XX or not. Because it kind of it could either be the end of the story arc or the end of the series. I have no idea. Because they don't give you any kind of editorial information in here. It does, and it ends on sort of this just big thing of two of the characters passing by. Like it was the last time they'd be seeing each other kind of thing. Even though they live in the same town. I've been up and down with this one. Liked the first issue. I liked last issue, the 5th issue, best. But issues like 2 through 4 were okay, but too wordy. I don't think this writer... I don't think Jonathan Luna has done as good a job without his brother. Except for... what was that one they did? Because he has a different writer on each of them, too. The one he did with the robot woman. Alex and Ada. That was the last. I forget who wrote that one with him, but it's not the same one who wrote this one. That was the last really good Jonathan Luna thing I've read. Was Alex and Ada. This one has just been mediocre. And the one before this, which was with a different writer, which I can't even remember the name of, was I think it was like 10 or 12 issues, and it was mediocre and also much more young adult, but okay. And this one I really liked. The latest issue of Savage Dragon. He pays homage to Sunday comic strips. So each spread, there's the Family Circus. Each spread there's Peanuts. Each spread is drawn in the style of a comic strip. And it really worked. I mean, a lot of times these gimmicky things don't work. But this really worked. I have to say, I enjoy.
Rex Morgan version.
Yeah, Rex Morgan. There's Calvin and Hobbes. And one of the reasons it really worked is because Malcolm Dragon. There's Doonesbury. Malcolm Dragon has 4 kids now. So all these kids strips, he could use the kids in. I'm not even sure what this one is. I recognize it, but don't remember it.
I'm not sure.
I'm like, what is this one? I'll have to look it up. I think he
is there like a table of contents or whatever that shows you the?
No, but he tweeted out what each one was. But I recognize that drawing style too.
Is that Andy Cap?
I don't know. I don't think it's Andy Capp. That's Foxtrot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Foxnot. What else do we have here? Doonesbury. That's Thimble Theater, the Popeye one. So of course they're just bashing each other in it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, it really worked. I love the Kathy one too.
I hate Kathy.
Don't get me started on Kathy, man.
I will
Kathy
always.
Kathy is the second worst strip in the history of American comic strips.
Which one's worse?
Garfield.
I don't think so. I give Garfield the benefit of the doubt.
No. I will always defend Kathy, and the reason I will defend Kathy is because it used to be at least. It was the only comic strip written from the point of view of a single female. Every other female in comic strips is either a mother, almost all of them are mothers. There was no comic strips about single women.
There's the best one ever, which is Mary Worth. Mary Worth, who's a total
Mary
psycho.
Worth is better than Kathy.
Yeah, but nobody knows. Nobody knows Mary Worth exists.
No, there's a fairly recent Mary Worth Phantom crossover.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Tim has had more work trouble again today. So,
yeah, it involved flying.
Somebody throwing a wheelchair through a window or a glass.
Yeah.
Something.
Yep.
Garfield is the sweetest dude ever. No, it isn't. You know what makes Garfield better? Removing Garfield. And there's a website. There's a website called Garfield minus Garfield, which is all about John talking to himself.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I can see where that would be amusing.
They actually published a book of it too. I have they published it in that Garfield soft cover format. Garfield minus Garfield. I think that's what it's called.
I don't know what artist does it, but there's also a series of Family Circus parodies that are all dealing with H.P. Lovecraft subjects, and those are funny. Yeah.
I am so sick of Family Circus parodies, though. That's the only problem. It's like, being that I've known friends and people who've been doing Family Circus parodies for like 30 years, I'm like, because it's always an inappropriate caption with a Family Circus cartoon. That's what it always is. This kind of thing. It's like, oh, okay, I've seen enough of this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, those strips they like I said, it brings out the existential angst of John as he sits there talking to himself with nobody responding to him. That's good stuff. And one other thing I read this week, which I pulled off my shelf, I have no idea how long this has been there. Queen of the Black by Megan Kelso. And I think this look at that Queen. Yeah, this was a review cop. My friend Bunch reviews stuff, or he did review stuff for I forget which publication. And so they give him all the comics to review. And this is from 2011. And he gives away the review stuff, and sometimes he gives away. He's like, yeah, you want this one? He gave it to me. And then I put it on the shelf for, I don't know, 9 years now. I don't know if he gave it to me in 2011 or 2012 or 2013. Either way, it's been sitting around a long time. And it wasn't shelved with all my other comics. It was all my other books. It was like in with art supplies. And I just happened to notice it there this week and went, you know what? I should pull that down and read it. And it's, though it came out in 2011, this is the first short story collection by author of The Artichoke Tales and Squirrel Mother is finally back in print. Originally published over 12 years ago and long out of print, Megan Kelso's Queen of the Black shows a young cartoonist pushing the boundaries of cartooning vocabulary to tell interior stories of startling and subtle beauty. But
by Jove.
But all of these are from the 90s, basically. and you could tell some of them are from beginning cartoonists, where she was kind of searching for herself. And it's kind of stuff I like. It's just little short stories. Some of them are just like cartooning for the sake of cartooning, which is what you do before you figure out how to write.
Right.
You're just like, well, I better draw a story. Okay. A story based on a dream, a story based on this, that. And she also explains some of the stories in the end, which is kind of cool. Her notes for the stories. And it's like one of the stories I like the best. What is the name of it? Queen of the Black, the name of it, was inspired by the work of sculptor Louise Nevelson. Not that it had anything to do with Louise Nevelson, actually, but it was about this woman who was a famous artist and her assistant, and her telling her assistant stories and just being weird. So that was one of my favorites. But the story that actually hit the hardest, that was really good, was the last story in the book, called The Reunion. And it's a story about a man who is trying to figure out if he should go to his 25th high school reunion. And I think 1984 was his 25th high school reunion. And then we find out that the reason that he doesn't want to go to his 25th reunion was he hasn't seen anybody from his high school. He never went to the 10th. Because back in high school, in like 1957, he got his girlfriend at the time pregnant, and his father was like, "This is what you're going to do. You're never going to talk to her again. She's going to Texas for 6 months. They're giving up the baby, and then she'll come back." So it was one of those, she's not well, so she went to Texas to recover for 6 months. Then she came back to the town the next year after giving birth and giving up the baby. And he was so scared of his father, he never talked to her again in high school. And so here he is going back 25 years later to finally talk to his old girlfriend who he got pregnant. And he's carried all this guilt with him for not knowing. He always assumed it was a son, but it turns out it was a daughter. And then, he talks to his old, everything's fine with them. Like I said, he's been carrying guilt around his whole life. And then at the end, he still can't. He doesn't want to. He wants to talk to his daughter, but doesn't want to track her down because he can't. He's kind of wimpy. He always says that's why he gave in and did whatever his father said. So the girlfriend eventually tracks down the daughter. Eventually, the daughter gets in touch with him, and they start to. And it was a really well done, poignant story. And then reading the notes in the back, you find out that that's her father's story. She wanted to collaborate with her father on a story. So I guess he's a writer. So she asked him to write something, and she expected him to write some nice little story. And instead she got this, and she was like, "Whoa."
Like, Dad, damn.
And she even said, I thought it would be really, I couldn't get it started because part of the story, she shows, not really graphically or anything. She shows her father and when he was a teenager with the girl having sex. Like, it doesn't show anything. But she was like, "Oh, I thought it would be really weird to draw my father having sex. But once I started doing it, it was just like drawing any other character. So I was able to do it." But I found that interesting. But like I said, it's worth it for the last story. For a few stories in here were really good. It was Queen of the Black. I have no idea what her current stuff is like because I've never heard of her before. It's amazing that, there's a Fantagraphic book too. It's amazing that, there can be this cartoonist who gets a collection in 2011 of her old work. And it's like, I've never heard of her new work. How did that happen? They always send them to Texas. Yep.
Do they stay at your house, Cor?
It was an excellent story in here, I gotta say. And there's, what's interesting about this too? This is just one of the. I don't know if you saw what was burning up my Facebook this week was people discussing. Who was it? Jerry Conway made this long Twitter thing about how he would save the comic industry or not.
Right.
And it's the usual stuff. I see Paolo laughing already.
But everybody already did reaction videos.
Yeah. As I was reading this, I was like, you know what? This is just the kind of book that people were saying they should make for young women, and it's been out there for 9 years and nobody cares. Like, this is the exact book they think they should make, and here it is. How come nobody cares? No one even knows it exists. It's like,
because it's not a superhero book.
Yeah. I think these continued troubles that the U.S. comics industry keeps on having is the kind of thing that when I look at the output of the French industry, there's no genre that dominates. I mean, if you want to buy science fiction, you go to the science fiction authors. If you want to buy something else like with humor, you go to the humor. They're not the genres aren't fighting each other. The publishers publish what they want. Sure, the humor is what sells more, but if they want to write something like that, like Queen of the Black, if they want to publish that, they will. And
I still think that in the U.S. that still all goes back to the comics code. The U.S. comics industry was infantilized and has never really fully recovered from that. Because we never really fully had comics for grown-ups. And even now there are comics for grown-ups, but not really. There's no. I think it also has to do with I think it has something to do with the form too, in that like comics like Saga that has sort of casual sex and nudity in it. That's the norm for book publishing. Like, if you were publishing a novel, casual, just throwing sex and nudity in there would be normal. There's nothing unusual, but in comics. And I think it also has to do, unfortunately, with drawings. With when we see a drawing of something, it has more power than if we just read it in text, in terms of like a penis. Someone sees a drawing of a penis, they're like, oh. You can say penis in a novel, and it's just like, it's whatever pops into your head, or nothing pops into your head, depending on who's reading it. But if you actually draw it on the page, it's like it can get people all in a tizzy.
Well, I mean, there's still the stigma, and this only exists in the United States, where comics are for kids.
Yeah, there is that, and that's where but I think that permeates the publishers in that. Even if you look back at the comics code loosening, all the stuff that like all the kind of adult stuff that got put in comics over the years is all the stuff you couldn't do in the comics code. It's like not the stuff that gets done sort of casually in novels.
Right.
So it's like you put super extra violence in there because you weren't allowed to have violence. You put super extra sex in there because you weren't allowed to have sex. You put super extra cursing in there because you weren't allowed to have cursing. It doesn't come up just kind of as if, casually.
Sure. One of the things I'm thinking about was a series by Beauchamp called Passengers of the Wind. It's never been published in the U.S. as far as I'm aware, and there's a lot of naked people in there because it deals with slave trading in the African coast. But the story is told from the point of view of a free-spirited woman in the 18th century. Who has casual sex with a lot of people, but it's really not important. I suppose that if they tried to sell it in the United States, some people might pick it up in a bookstore and wonder, why is this kiddie comic, which it's not a kiddie comic. Nobody in Europe would pick up Passengers of the Wind thinking, I'm going to give this to my little 7-year-old.
Right. Yeah, that's I think is exactly what's missing from U.S. comics, is that stuff like you said, just sex is just in it, nudity might just be in it, and it's no big deal because it's for grown-ups. We don't have that. We have some stuff like I said. To me, Saga was really the first sort of post-Comics Code comic. Because it was the first, to me, just reading it, was the first comic that read more like a novel in terms of its casualness with nudity and sex. It wasn't a big deal into the comic. Some people made a big deal out of it. But it wasn't, in the context of the comic, it wasn't that big a deal. What is our famous young French author Bastien Vives is pushing boundaries with explicit pedophilia. We don't think we need that. It's just borderline okay with one of his albums, not okay at all with another. French critics love him. Yeah, I don't think borderline pedophilia will go over well here. That's for sure.
No, remember what it was like when Alan Moore tried to publish, what was it, Lost Girls?
Lost Girls.
Oh yeah, yeah. He had trouble publishing that one. It permeates the publisher and the general public who doesn't read comics, but just it's not a respected art form as well. Yeah, still just it's to the vast majority of Americans, it's the funnies, it's kid stuff,
and it drives me crazy even to this day that you will have an article about comics in the U.S. and it leads off with the goddamn sound effects from the Batman '66 show.
Bam, pow! Comics aren't just for kids anymore.
Oh.
I think that if heavy metal back in the day had tried pushing more with the graphic novel format after serializing the strips in the magazine, it might have gone better with bookstores.
Yeah,
especially because in the 70s, the big two would not dream of doing stuff for the bookstores. So there was that market. Nobody took advantage of it. Not even in the early 80s. Not Fantagraphics, not Eclipse. The fact that they just kept doing magazines, monthly magazines or bi-monthly, instead of trying to push the boundary by going with a different format that would appeal to other people. And I have people. Why the hell are you always talking about format? Format is important in the way that you communicate on what's inside on what the story is about.
That's all about distribution too. Mm-hmm. If there's no distribution chain for graphic novels, you won't be able to sell them. I mean, they found that out in 1947 with It Rhymes with Lust. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
A lot of people always talk about Will Eisner inventing the graphic novel. This was actually a graphic novel in 1947 that Matt Baker drew, and I forget who wrote it, but it was Dark Horse put out a facsimile of it like 15 years ago now. That's when I first heard of it. I didn't even know it existed, and I bought it. And it's a graphic novel for adults and everything. But it died because there was no distribution. They distributed it through magazine distributors, but they couldn't rack it. Mm-hmm. That's what it all comes down to.
In 1947, the French didn't have albums like we think of them. The first Tintin albums were printed. You'll notice one thing. Let me see if I can. Okay, so this will do. It's not in the format, but it's in the French albums. The strips are numbered horizontally. So this would be strip 1, strip 2 on the same page. Strip 1, strip 2, and then on the strip 3, 4. And the first Tintin albums were published like that. They had twice the pages, but the strips are horizontal. They were rearranged back for when they started using the more normal approach in the 50s. That's because the first French comics, they were not published in magazines. They were published like in the Sundays. Tintin starts in a Sunday supplement for youth readers, for young readers, in a Belgian newspaper.
That was all the way back in the 20s.
In the 1930s.
Yeah, but like I said, it was all about once the early 50s hit in the U.S. and comics became, terrible, terrible things. There was no hope.
The French had their own comics code authority as well, and it started 5 years before. It's before the American one. It started.
But were you allowed to make comics for adults under that?
No.
Then how did they get out of it?
Well, the 1968.
What was that?
Well, the May 68 almost social revolution in France kind of helped pave the way for it. Not just in comics, but everywhere. And that's what the May 68 was sort of the hippie revolution in Europe. It wasn't like the hippies, but it made everybody more open to try different things in terms of culture, especially because there were a lot of socialist movements all around Western Europe.
Did the graphic album format already exist before that?
Yeah. They started doing the regular versions of Tintin in the 50s. Even when the Tintin and Spirou already existed, Pilote starts in 1959, 57 or 59. So you had graphic novels, but there were things that you could do in those magazines.
But keep in mind, it would probably be as hard in Europe to start printing monthly comics as it would be in America to start printing graphic novels.
But there were monthly comics. There were weekly comics and monthly comics.
The thing is,
the monthly comics nowadays are for Disney's, and in Italy they still have the Bonelli series. But Tintin magazine was a weekly. Tintin magazine was a weekly. Tintin, Spirou, Pilote, they were weeklies. The comics were pre-published in 2 to 4 page installments, and by the time you finished, you had a full story, and you could print a graphic novel, and you distribute that one to bookstores.
That is not how it worked over here. So, like I said, it's all down to distribution. A lot of it is
and there's another thing, which is creative rights. In Europe, you cannot say that the creators are not the creators, even if they don't have editorial control. They always have the right to authorship.
Right. We don't have that. We have work for hire over here.
I was going to say they probably weren't doing work for hire contracts, and
work for hire doesn't exist. Work for hire is a distinctly American craziness. Paolo knows this, but when I watch European, Mexican, or Latin American discussion of comics, it's much more substantive and respectful of the medium than similar American discussions.
Sure. If you guys tried going to, you guys could go to Angoulême, and I want to go. I still I've never been there, but it's something that I still have to do one day. The panels that they have there, they're much more intellectual. And it's not people trying to go for backroom stories of how the comics are made and, well, was it so cool to draw this? No, we don't. When we think about comics, we don't think about comics like that. It's more we do analyze the stuff, the social context, what the writers and the artists are trying to say, where they come up with actually come up with their ideas. And there's a much deeper analysis. And
do it without the self-loathing of Comics Journal.
But who will win in a fight, Thor or Superman?
Well, this is the thing. Nobody cares.
The marketing department wins in a fight like that. I was going to say the analysis that they're doing, is what was I saying? Good grief, I just lost it. They do the analysis without having the self-loathing of the Comics Journal.
Yeah, that's a good description. Yeah, there's only one creator in European comics who is not associated with the character he created, which is Rob Vell, who created the character Spirou. He never worked on an album with his character. The only album that was published, signed by him, is Number Zero, which has short stories which appeared in Spirou. The other albums, the first 3 or 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly because I don't like that series. They have either collections of short stories or they have 2 stories, but by the 6th or 7th, they're already doing full graphic novels, which are pre-published in Spirou magazine.
Okay.
And Spirou was the the greatest enemy of Tintin, because Tintin was where you had the Linclair comics, the ones that were Tintin clones, and Rob Vell's style for Spirou was much more dynamic, closer to American comics. Right. It's before Asterix,
right? But it's closer to that art style, right?
Yeah, because when Pilote starts, it's so that because Tintin and Spirou are both Belgian, and the French comics world is dominated by the Belgians. Pilote starts so that the French can get a hand on the market.
Interesting.
And Asterix starts in Pilote.
We just get so few European comics over here, which is weird because there's so many Japanese comics. Mm-hmm. You would think that someone would bring some European ones over, but I don't know why that.
Well, they try. They try every few years.
Yeah. Do you remember Catalan Communications?
Yeah. That's where I read most of my European stuff from.
And how expensive were they in the 80s?
Oh, they were. The only time I got them was, I remember, I think I showed them one week, was in the late 80s when Jim Hanley's Universe, which is a big store in Manhattan, it used to be in the A&S Plaza Mall around Herald Square. It hasn't been there in decades. But I can remember going there, and they had them all on sale for because they were like $15 to $20 for a graphic novel in like 1991 or something. They had them all on sale for like $6 or $8, and I bought a bunch of them. So I was like, "Oh, I'll get them at this price," because I think a regular, what was the price of a regular comic, a Marvel comic in 1990? 75 cents.
$1.25, maybe something like that.
I don't even think it was that high by 1990. Right. I think it's
a lot cheaper these days.
Yeah, a lot cheaper than $20 for an 80-page graphic album, as nice as it looked.
Yeah, and I remember in 1995, a softcover French album was twice the price of a monthly 80-page comic, which was digest. So. But the hardcover was 3 times more expensive than the softcover. So it was, $1.15, but it would be something like $7. Probably seven. No way, man, I can't remember because we didn't have the euro back then. So now I forget. Wait a minute.
Translate all.
I have to do double conversion. Let's see now. 115, 750. Yeah, so it was probably.
How many hogsheads is that?
Yeah, so no, it was probably $9 in the mid '90s for a hardcover album.
Okay. Spiro's style is often called the atomic dynamic. Captain Haddock reflects a bit of that style in Tintin. None of that means anything to me.
No. This is the guys in Tintin. That was Hergé taking pot shots at the guys at Spirou magazine.
Oh man.
Gore was talking about Mexican and Latin American discussion because he did a video this week where he showed the Italian magazine L'Eternauta, which is named after the Argentinian comic of the same name. They published that Argentinian comic there, but they also had Hugo Pratt material, and they had material from the Spanish magazine CIMOC. And if you have a hard time finding French stuff, and the French are the big ones, if you have problems finding French stuff in America, you have absolutely no knowledge of what goes on in Italy or Spain or Argentina, which is where they have, even if they don't have a big market, they have a lot of creators.
They should get Spratt to do one issue of the Autumnal just so they can name it a Pratfall. Yeah, that was bad.
Mm-hmm. No, and I was looking at something. Hugo Pratt was doing comics in the 1950s already.
Wow.
I didn't know it was that far back.
Corto Maltese, that's his, right?
Yeah.
I've read more about Hugo Pratt than I've read Hugo Pratt comics.
That's so have I.
Yeah. A few years ago, they started doing new Corto Maltese albums. Now with new guys because Hugo Pratt is dead, but and because that's one thing you could do. If you don't want to do the more comics with that character, the publisher usually has the right to ask if you allow more new stories to be told with different writers and artists, and most of them say yes because they get a royalty.
Right.
And right now the new guys who are doing Corto Maltese is the Black Sad writer.
Okay.
And the Spanish artist from that comic I showed the other time that Tim likes the cover, the FM, the one with the multi.
Oh yeah.
With all the short stories in the cover. Yeah.
Did you see Tim's video from last weekend on that Kirby book he got?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty. I'd say I thought that he got a Jack Kirby coffee table book for $8 at Ollie's. I was like, holy cow!
I actually went to Ollie's and picked up some stuff too, but it's nothing spectacular.
Yeah, I think there's an Ollie's like up by my sister's house, a county away, but I've never actually been there. So
yeah, I got like a bunch of Star Wars graphic novels, dirt cheap, and a couple other things, but nothing. Nothing that great.
What I liked about that book is how wide it was too, because the design on it, the designer was able to work with full page and double page spreads of comics because it was double wide pages, so you could fit 2 comics pages on one page of this book, and it looked like it was right about the same size as a comic book.
It would have been interesting to see if they had allowed this to happen. It would have been really interesting to see what Bill Watterson could have done with the format, where if he had been allowed to use the entire page, like Sunday page, like the old Prince Valiant style, page size.
Yeah, have you seen that new Prince Valiant artist edition? He didn't create Corto Maltese. He returned to Europe.
Yeah, I know which one. I don't have that one, but I know what you're talking about.
A couple of my friends have posted theirs on, that they got it and they posted it on Facebook, and it is gigantic. It is.
Yeah, it's huge. I have 3 reprint volumes that were done on original page size.
Yeah,
and they're not hardcovers. They're soft covers, and they're very expensive to try to find those these days.
I got a couple.
Published back in the 90s, they were like $150 each back then. And
I have a Walton Skeezix. Let's see. That's this size. I mean, that's pretty gigantic. But I think this still wasn't full size for I think the newspaper is actually still slightly. It's close, but that's gigantic, that one.
Yeah, but I'm over 6 feet tall. When I put this book on, the floor, it comes up past my knee. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is, being that I have a tape measure right next to me. What is that, 21?
About 17 or
16.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn big. I've seen I think that they have Little Nemo and Slumberland ones that are that big.
They sure do. I've seen some of those.
This is the where is it? Dark Horse published some Gasoline Alley. Since it's got the name, but this one is smaller.
Right.
This one is. These are Gasoline Alley, 16 by 12. But it's still nice. It's got these Sunday Gasoline Alleys. Let me see if I can get one that really shows the color off. Oh, there we go. There's one with fall colors and stuff in it. Oh yeah, this is a pretty cool book.
I love oversized books. I'm a sucker for them.
Which reminds me, I have to look up on one of my videos when I was showing off one of the artist editions. I mentioned that I built special shelves for my artist editions, and somebody was like, "Can you show us those shelves?" Because I'm trying to build shelves. I want to know what they look like.
Sure. I still want to find a book stand that will allow me to like put one on the table, not just flat, but like, tilted at an angle to read it.
Yeah.
We lost Paolo.
No, I'm still here. Just shut down the camera.
No, he's there.
Because I got up.
Ah. That's roughly the size. I only seen them on TV. They fold them up like those old British pounds. Yeah.
It's funny. You're talking about the size and format of books. I went down to visit Charles Vess at his studio a few years ago, and he has some of the original Japanese versions of Lone Wolf and Cub, which are bigger.
Yes, so is my friend.
Digest ones that Dark Horse put out.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm looking at these, and I'm like, I want these versions here. I don't want those tiny little ones,
When Dark Horse put those out, they tried to convince everybody that was the size they were published in Japan. My friend Bunch had the original Japanese ones, and they were full size. They weren't those smaller digest. So I knew they weren't. Matter of fact, I think it was when my friend Bunch, when he was working at DC, when he was an assistant editor there in the early 2000s, someone at DC tried to tell him that they were originally published in Japan at that small size. And he immediately went back to his office and pulled some out and went, "Really?"
Yeah.
No, the founder of our monthly comics dinner, he said once he went to Japan and he found one of those phone books abandoned in the subway, because that's what they do. And he thought about bringing it, but he couldn't fit it in the luggage.
Well, that's what I don't know if I ever told my friend Julio, who I used to work with in Marvel. He moved to Japan for, I don't know, about 5 years to teach English in the early 2010s. And he told me, and I'd see him every now and then by video, and he'd show me whatever Japanese comics he was reading. And he said the way they did it there was you went to a used bookstore and bought 10 volumes of your comic you wanted to read, brought them home, read them, and then sold them back to the used bookstore. It was like everybody's apartment was too small to keep a lot of those comics in, so you just bought them and then sold them again to back to the store. I was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "That's how everyone does things here." I was like, "All right, never heard of that."
Yeah, you can't build a man cave.
Yeah, I'm just like, go to use the bookstore, buy what you want, and keep it.
Better yet, just buy the used bookstore and live there.
If I could make a living doing that, I would have done that a long time ago. It's like there's a very famous quote said, the best way to become a millionaire by being a bookseller is by starting off with $2 million.
Did you ever see? I saw a piece a while ago on some millionaire in England who buys up books just to have them. I think he was originally a bookseller, and he made a lot of money doing it, or maybe he made a lot of money doing it and he was doing something else and was a bookseller on the side. And then he retired or something with millions of dollars in the bank. Then bookstores started going out of business. So he'd buy up their inventory just because he loved books and warehouse them. Then I think he started another chain of bookstores or something, or internet. But he's like the man with the most books because he bought up so many bookstores stock when they went out of business.
Relating back to comics, I saw an article a few years ago about a guy, and I don't remember what his name was, but he claimed to have the largest private collection of comic books in the United States. And I know for a fact there was 2 or 3 people I could think of off the top of my head that had larger collections than he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just looking for some.
I remember asking Maggie Thompson about it sent her a message like, do you realize this guy's claiming he has the largest? And she's like, no, he doesn't. It's like, we both knew for a fact that Harlan Ellison had a bigger collection than he did.
Yeah, wonder how big was Harlan Ellison's collection? I have no idea.
It was over 250,000.
Wow, that's a lot of comics. You need a warehouse and a filing system for that.
Well, he had them in a climate controlled place in his house that had like sliding vault doors, which were really cool. I wanted to see just his library, but
I don't know if Chuck Krasinski would count since he's a comic book dealer.
Right.
I don't know if he's got his own personal collection.
But
technically he does.
Collection, right?
Well, technically his business owns them all, so I don't know. But yeah, he would. Friend of mine is a criminal defense lawyer. Likes to joke that he practices law just to buy books. Yep, there are people like that.
Have you ever seen any videos where they've toured Maha Comics in Denver? Where they've toured the warehouse? I've
seen video of the warehouse.
Impressive.
Yeah. He was just showing off all the trade paperbacks he had there, I think.
Right.
I get the Mile High Comics newsletter.
Yeah. I remember seeing the ads for those in Marvel books back in like the 80s. Yeah. Where you could subscribe to the newsletter.
I used to send away for the Mile High Comics catalog. Not that I ever bought anything. Bought in like 1980, because they used to advertise, send us a self-addressed stamped envelope or something.
Was it the NICE Club? Was this like an acronym they had? NICE or something?
I remember that. You either had to send them an envelope or $1 or whatever to pay for their cat, and you get their cat. Every now and then I'd send for the catalog.
I remember when I first started getting the Bud Plant catalogs in the mail. Those were fantastic. Those replaced the Sears Wish book for me. Yeah.
Oh, and there was just so much art to look at in those Bud Plant catalogs.
And I kept all those. I'm kind of glad I did, because it's now almost like a resource volume of stuff that was out of print.
How many Bud Plant catalogs do you have?
40, something like that.
Wow.
A bunch, several.
Yeah.
But it's cool to go back and look through them and discover stuff that interests you now that may not have interested you back then. And like, what the hell was I thinking? Why didn't I pick up this, when I had a chance? But, your taste change over the years, things like that.
Right. What was funny, I can remember, I think I did a video on my my first Comics Buyer's Guide that I bought.
Yeah.
The first price guide, the first Overstreet guide that I bought. 1980, I think it was from. I still have that. Right. So I did a video on it a year or two ago. Just looking through it, looking at the ads, looking at a few prices, whatever.
Right.
And one of the things I noticed in the ad was that there was an ad for like a comic, and there was an illustration, and it was signed, I think, James Palmiotti. So I tweeted it to Jimmy, and I was like, "Hey, is this you?" And he's like, "Oh, how did you find that?" He did like a drawing. I think it was a drawing for a local comic shop when he was in high school, and they used it in the ad.
Right. Yeah, it's fun. Famous Monsters is really good to go back and look through ads and stuff like that, and just see how dirt cheap stuff was back in the day that you could have picked up and probably should have. That'll cost you an arm and a leg now.
Well, it wasn't as cheap as you think back then, because otherwise you would have bought it.
No, in comparison, that's true.
Yeah. Good stuff. You guys want to look at that Mystery Tales?
Yep. Do we have to?
Let's share that. You didn't. I liked this one.
I liked it better. I liked it better than the Jungle Book.
It was my favorite of the four.
It's my second least favorite of the four.
Your second least favorite? I don't know. Yeah. I very much enjoyed this one, I have to say.
Marvel in the 50s, they were pretty much an assembly line. So all the stories kind of look the same.
No, this one was different. This one had I thought that had a distinct look for each one. It was all moody, and this was pre-code stuff too. Like this first story, it was funny. Hold on, am I on it? How come it's not moving? There we go. The one thing that really struck me about this whole book is is how off register it was.
Yeah, that's the one thing that kept bugging the hell out of me was just the
it was
print.
So.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's so
I know they
off,
say
it's
all
not
this
funny. Yeah.
All this old comic book printing was so cheap, but this one's really cheap. I mean, this one is off register throughout the whole. I mean, just look at up here. That's off red. The black plate is off register by 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And some things look like they have highlights.
When I was reading it, I was thinking this would look better in black and white.
And I actually liked the moodiness of this one. I liked the weird drawing on the faces. I liked some of these establishing shots. And I liked the color in this one too. This weird green and yellow colors they got going on here. I liked the mood of this whole piece. And this one also, I looked up after I read it because I had no idea who drew any of these. And so I looked up who drew it afterwards. And it turns out this first one is George Russo's, who I worked with at Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm really not sure. I know that George Russo was mostly an inker at Marvel during the 50s.
No, he drew and inked in the 50s. In the 60s, he was an inker. And then he became a colorist in the 70s. Like the last thing I have of his that he wrote, but he drew himself and didn't just inked, was like a Brave and Bold issue from like the mid 60s with Green Arrow and somebody. I have it over there. But by the 60s, I think he was mostly an inker. But in the 50s, he like drew a bunch of stuff for Atlas. But hold on, let me show you a picture of him in the 90s as I pulled it out. That's George Russo's doing coloring at Marvel in the 90s. So it's amazing to me to think here I was working with a guy who was drawing this in 1952.
Right.
And like I said, he worked on Batman #1 too. So that's how far he went back. So unfortunately, with this story, I knew how it was going to end. It was one of those I was just like, oh, the bugs are going to save him. But I really liked I liked the ugly look of everyone.
Mm-hmm. I found it interesting that the story is set in Italy.
Yeah. Well, I wonder why it was set in Italy. I guess they didn't think the wine. That they didn't. Hank Chapman didn't think that anybody in America had wine tasters. Well, maybe I don't even know if Italian towns had that could be it. Everybody in America knew there was no such thing as an official wine taster in America. So if you set it in Italy and say there's an official wine taster, even if there's not, who's gonna question you on it? Whoops, I'm going the wrong direction.
But by the time he would have no taste between for wine, he would no longer be able to work as a wine taster because it's supposed to be you're supposed to note fluctuations between bottles in the on the same batch. So not being able to tell wine from water would be by that time you would be considered an invalid.
You're not buying into the realism of this story? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
the story where the bugs saved him?
Yeah, the bugs saved him is okay, but I don't believe he survived that long without any taste whatsoever.
And they managed to line up in these nice, very defined concentric circles,
And well, that's it.
Died,
They had to do that so he'd notice. I mean, they all had to taste the wine too. It couldn't just be one bug tasting the wine, because then he might not have noticed they died. Had to be all the bugs tasting the wine.
So like the author doesn't realize there are some things that are poisonous to animals that aren't to humans, and vice versa.
Yeah. Oh my! I can't believe the parts of the story you guys aren't buying into. I wonder if the separators did, because I think at this time, I don't know if Marvel had any colorists, because it used to be in comics, you just send the black and whites off to the color separator printer and they just add color.
Gotcha.
I don't know when that stopped. I know it's often credited as Marie Severin started doing color guides for EC Comics, and those are some of the first color guides done in comics. But I don't know if any other companies did that or not. It's just so I'm wondering if these weird colors were just somebody at the color separator going, I'm going to make this one weird.
They've been adding credits for Stan Goldberg, but on the 50s material, but only on the covers because they have no idea who actually colored. And it might be that, it would probably be the separator's job, because if they wanted to license the comics, the stories to foreign publishers, they would probably need to publish it in black and white, so there was no need for them to color in-house.
Yeah. I just don't know when it became standard to make color guides. I have no idea.
Don't know.
And here's another one by George Russo.
I don't believe this one is the same artist. It looks completely different.
No. This is why Stan Lee used to call him George Inky Russos.
Mm-hmm. No, I believe that he inked it, but it's not the same type of layouts. I was wondering if maybe this was an early Gene Colan.
No.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it. Sometimes it looked, but it kind of reminded me, but not really. But it's not George Russo. I don't believe that it's George Russo's doing the penciling on both of them.
Yeah, these faces here definitely. I mean, that's his inking style, no doubt. But the layouts do look different now that you mention it, because these are very static in here.
Yeah, except for that one in the upper right there that's got a diagonal, which is. I noticed that's a little unusual for that time frame.
Those are very static, lots of medium shots.
Right.
This establishing shot, I like these two establishing shots look nice, but they're very kind of technical. But like this right here looks very much like George Russo's, but that's probably because all that ink. Let me go back to the first one.
Look at that guy jumping. The guy jumping the wall. That looks like somebody who's used to do action shots, and that's kind of why it reminded me a bit of Gene. Maybe I thought at first it might be Gene Colan,
I think it might be the color. The color is so extreme on this first one that it really makes a difference to the layouts too, but it's tough to tell.
I think
George would do stuff like this with the lighting all the time. Well, that could be done in the inks. The next one is Alan Bellman. I've heard.
No, we care about it first.
Did Alan Bellman, the Black Book? Vince Caraboda. I've never heard of him.
Yeah, he mostly shows up in war comics during the 50s.
Yeah. But there was a lot of ugliness in this comic. I mean, there's just ugly people everywhere.
One thing about this type of comics at Marvel, they all started doing science fiction. Then they quickly switched to horror. And when the code came and it was the mid-50s and it was the space race, they all started doing science fiction again. Although Atlas usually had a thing for doing morality tales, even with the science fiction, to make it weird science.
Mm-hmm. But what I liked about this one, what was good about these pre-code ones is you didn't always know. I mean, the endings could be gruesome rather than like this ending was gruesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like an EC ending.
Well, no, this is sort of like that, but it's like kind of like if you read the post-code ones, every justice has to happen at the ending of all of it, and with this one, there was no justice. There was just tears.
Poetic justice.
I kind of like that.
When you were talking at the beginning of the podcast about the creepy book that looked like it was bound in human flesh, so this is the story that I was thinking about.
Yeah. Well, in postcode, the wife would not be having an affair.
Yeah, right. You were not allowed to have an affair there. Oops, wrong.
She would have to be a woman of loose morals.
The colors in this one are extreme too. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like it.
I mean, there's full magenta, full yellow. green, and then we get this blue and light yellow. A green screaming woman with a red background.
Jennifer Walters there for a second.
This one was just weird. This is Alan Bellman. Now,
that one was kind of strange.
Because Bellman, what I've seen of Bellman, he kind of looks like the guy who would draw those directions to build things. Like
instructional books.
Instruction manuals.
Did he draw? What? I know his name from somewhere. I don't know where.
Bellman had a feature called "Who Wants to Be a Detective" or something, which was a one-pager that the reader would decipher. But he also worked on the Human Torch in the late 40s.
Okay, that's where I knew
he left comic books in the first half of the 50s, went down to Florida and started working for a newspaper there. But he kept going. When the convention circuit started, he usually went to a lot of conventions.
Oh, that's right. Did he just die in the last few years?
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, that's where I know. I think I just saw an interview published with him somewhere.
Because he was one of the oldest guys.
Yeah, he was one of the oldest guys around. He was. Did he work on Captain America too in the 40s? I think they said.
He might have. I remember his name more in Human Torch credits.
Okay,
but he might have worked on other superheroes as well.
Captain America after Kirby and Simon.
Yeah, because it was more Vince Alasia doing stuff on Captain America. And what was the other guys? I can't remember. The guys who also worked on the Wizard.
Here's one where the printing is so bad that you lose out on the money panel in the end, where you're supposed to see all these guys down here have animal faces.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the printing is so bad you can't see it.
I find the motivation for this story kind of weird, because if the character was born blind, you wouldn't miss vision.
Right.
Well,
that's true.
Even if I could see someone blind wanting vision, but the fact that the zookeeper's eyes turned everybody into animals just made me go, what?
Especially when the doctor says we're not transplanting his brain.
I know.
Yeah, when they did that, I could see that ending coming all the way from Cleveland,
But I still don't understand it. I knew he was going to see something.
A great story. I understand it.
I knew he was going to see something different, of course.
Right.
But
all this
the
time
fact that
go ahead.
He sees everybody. I was like, are they really animals, or is he really an animal in an animal world who thought he was human? Or is everybody? It just confused
the only way
me.
that would work would be if he had been non-blind at some time during his life.
I don't think there's any way it could work.
If he was blind from birth, it wouldn't work that way.
I don't think there's any way it can work. This ending just baffles me. But it baffles me. Like I said, you don't even get the payoff of these guys. I was like, I had to look. I was like, are those guys animals? I think they are. The printing is so bad they look like blobs. The printing was exceptionally bad in this issue.
I agree.
The hot seat. I mean, easily the worst of the four. Bob Fujitani. There's another name I know. Did he do Jungle Girl stuff?
Probably.
He did a lot of different stuff. He just died recently.
Yeah. Last week or something.
Yeah,
and he was also 98. The older guys are the rest of the older guys are dying.
Yeah, 98's old. The hot seat. This was another weird one, but I liked it because once again there was no real justice at the end. There was just pain about a guy who kills his wife by electrifying. He figures out how to wire her wheelchair to make the static electricity eventually build up an electrocutor. I thought that was a pretty cool murder weapon. Then, of course, it ends up he gets paralyzed and will have to either go to jail or sit in the wheelchair and die.
Well,
I wonder if
make somebody else touch it.
I wonder if Don Rico drew this one because when Rico stopped doing comics, he went to the West Coast and started doing detective novels.
Uh-huh.
And Don Rico and Paul S. Newman are the ones that we'll never know exactly how many stories they did.
Right, because they wrote so many uncredited stories. The Telegram. I enjoyed that last one, even though it was goofy. Like I said, I really enjoyed the mood of this comic. I enjoyed the colors, the weird drawing. But once again, look at how out. I mean that's a quarter. Once again, that's over a quarter inch. That black plate is shifted. That's just there was one drawing in here that made it look like it had highlights. Where is that? Oops. There was one drawing where someone was in all green. I don't remember. Oh, this over here. It's like that's not supposed to be a yellow highlight. There's like the whole plate has shifted. The whole black plate is shifted. So it looks like a highlight, but it's not supposed to be. That's how bad the registration is off. But I have to say, overall, I enjoyed that one. That was my favorite of the old-timey ones we read.
Yeah, pretty good.
Even if it was the second least favorite.
It's interesting because that's the period that people from Marvel's history that people are not familiar with. The heroes ended 3 years before, and then people don't care about anything until the heroes come back. But Marvel had an assembly line, so when a genre starts becoming popular, Martin Goodman would launch about almost a dozen books just to flood the stands, and then he would cancel the ones that didn't sell.
He would follow the trends.
Mm-hmm. And all of these guys, Bob Fujitani, George Russo's, Al Keller, they would work on the assembly line. They'd pop up for an assignment. Stan Lee would hand them, hey, here's the script, 5 pages. Bring them back next week.
Right. That's right.
And they would do their own inking.
From Bud Plant and Mile High Comics, when I lived in a small town without a comic shop. Captain Victory, I had a subscription to through the mail when it first came out. I think I had a subscription to Captain Victory and Star Slayer.
Did those come flat? Send them to you in the mail?
Yeah, now mailed flat.
Good.
They send them to me flat. Because that may have just been before the comic shop opened, or maybe just before I was able to get it regularly. What year did Captain Victory come out? That was like 80, 81, 82?
Something around that, yeah.
Still one of my favorite Jack Kirby things. I think he had a lot of good stuff in there.
Going back to European artists, I saw an article in the past couple of weeks or so that had it was about Sergio Topi. I got to get some of his stuff. It just looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
But even here is not a name that appears often.
Right.
No. Yeah, I recognize it, but I don't know what he did. Who was the Rancerox guy? He was Italian, wasn't he?
Ooh. Xerox? It's like a
Rancerox. Yeah, but that one was
heavy metal in the early 80s. He died young.
Tamburini, I think. But the guys who did Rancerox, they were they were indies, so they were not very well known. Although I think
I thought he was Italian. I can't remember.
No, they were Italian. They were Italian indies.
Who were big
they weren't mainstream artists in Italy.
Oh, okay. Oh, the Independence. I'm thinking the West Indies.
No. He's thinking the West Indies Islands. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why I'd think that, but I did.
Oh, why did nobody ever come up with a comics mail order system that's called the West Indies Trader? West Indies Trading Company. That'd be awesome, though. That's a great name for that sort of thing.
Let me see. The guy's name is
Topi is one of the greatest ever. Shiradzi, the Collector, is his most well known. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Rank Xerox was written by Stefano Tamburini and drawn by Tanino Liberatore.
Liberatore. Yeah, there's the name I know. But he died young, didn't he?
No, he's still alive.
I thought one of them died. That's why they didn't make any more.
Might be yeah, it was the writer. Yeah, he died at age 30.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was the writer who died.
Yeah.
What is the artist doing?
What's the artist doing? Let me see. Liberatore. Not much. Okay. I mean, the Italian Wikipedia. Let me try and read this because I can read Italian, but I have to concentrate.
Oh, okay. We'll be quiet for a moment.
No, you can talk. I just need to translate in my head.
He's got to translate in his head.
Okay, he doesn't have the Babelfish installed.
Yeah.
Oh, he continued doing Rank Xerox with a French writer that was published in the 90s.
Ah, I never knew there was more Rank Xerox.
And it did costume designs for the Asterix and Obelix live-action movie in 2003.
Ah.
Won an award for it.
Did you see that? I don't know his name because I never heard it before. Who just died? Who was like an underground cartoonist in the 60s, and he was a political cartoonist, and then he went on to do set design for Hollywood. He
you're talking about Ron Cobb.
Ron Cobb, who just died. Yeah, being I'm not a movie guy, I had never heard of him.
I put up a little Facebook post about that. Ron Cobb is one of my favorite artists ever. He started off doing political cartoons. He's very well known.
Yeah, I've seen somebody
transitioned into production design and concept art for movies. He worked on. He was the art director for Conan the Barbarian.
Wow.
He designed all the Nostromo parts for Alien.
Yeah, they said he designed the ship.
Well, yeah, but I hate these freaking sound bites.
Yeah.
Captions they have for these articles. Which ship? Are you talking about the Alien ship? Because that one was designed by H.R. Giger. You know?
Yeah, not that one. Yeah.
The Nostromo was both the interiors and the exteriors were all done by Ron Cobb.
Yeah, I think they said the Nostromo was.
Yeah, he did the signage for all that stuff too. He even created all the signage and graphics for it. He worked on The Last Starfighter. He designed the DeLorean, the time machine that was done in Back to the Future.
Okay.
He
I was here to design the DeLorean. I'm like, didn't DeLorean design the DeLorean?
He designed the changes to the DeLorean. The DeLorean was
the homemade one for the time machine version.
The DeLorean was conceived by Colin Chapman, who owned Lotus.
Cobb also did work for Lucas for a lot of the aliens that showed up in the Cantina series in Star Wars.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
The Illithorians, which are commonly referred to as Hammerhead, as the action figure was, he did that. The Durans. He did a painting that Lucas saw in John Milius's office of a guy that was riding a giant lizard, and that showed up in Star Wars as the stormtrooper on the Dewback lizard. He's done a lot of stuff over the years, and he's in terms of production design, concept art, he's up there with guys like Ralph McQuarrie and Sid Mead.
Okay. Yeah, I don't pay that much attention to movies, so I don't really know the names of a lot of those guys. But just seeing the all the comic book people mentioning him and saying he did underground comics.
Yeah, William Stout worked with Cobb as a production designer on the Conan movies, and I heard Bill say this, and he's got a written version of it too. But I've heard him say that the word genius is bandied about these days in a lot of cases where it's not really appropriate. But for Ron Cobb, it was absolutely. He is really a genius at what he did. So
let's see. I was just talking to a friend yesterday.
It's good stuff.
And naming the 5 greatest comic artists ever. Good luck with that. Eisner, Brescia, Topi, Foster, and Kirby, just because.
I'd have to separate that out into different subgenres of comics.
Well,
the best.
I wouldn't. Tough call.
There are a few French guys that you'd be surprised at to see how they do cartoony art, and then how they do photorealistic.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite comic artists of all time is Seth. Where do you put him on a list like that? He does something so different from everybody. That is from all those guys. It's like, how do you compare Hal Foster to Seth? I mean,
I gotta go with Hal Foster. I'm sorry.
See, I don't. I've never read anything of Hal Foster's that I've liked. Not that I think he's bad or anything.
Nobody on this planet could draw water like Hal Foster could.
Hal Foster's got a lot of weird poses. No, I'm thinking of Bern Hogarth.
That was Rob Liefeld.
I'm thinking of Bern Hogarth, not Hal Foster. Sorry about that, Hal.
Yeah, Bern Hogarth does have some really static poses.
No, they're not. They're just strange. They
are strange. I agree. Right.
Hal Foster's Prince Valiant. See, I can't even read Prince Valiant.
No, I think it's one of the greatest things ever done.
Yeah, I can't. I've never been able to read Prince Valiant.
I always preferred Alex Raymond.
I like Alex Raymond, but I prefer Hal Foster.
Yeah. But either way, it's impossible to compare Hal Foster and Seth. They do such completely different things.
Right. But then again, I like
that. It's like comparing, a soccer basketball.
See, I like Michael Kaluta and also like Fred Hembeck.
There's the illustrative guys.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, who's better, Michael Kaluta or Charles Schultz? How do you compare those two? You can't. Right. They do two different things.
Right.
Which is what makes that list so hard to make.
Right. Well, I think for that list, they may be talking more in terms of like impact on the medium.
Yeah. Paolo, what did you think of the new Lucky Luke? Almost induced vomits to me.
I don't even care what they're doing now. Because they're not trying to do postmodernist stuff with Lucky Luke, and it's ridiculous.
Is it a different creative team?
Yeah,
we didn't keep comic
because they still do regular comics with new creators, but then they do this other postmodernist stuff. Like the last one is as in riding a bicycle.
Gotcha.
Our sparkling conversation wasn't enough to keep Comic Crack awake. That's okay. I slept to YouTube videos myself. Matter of fact, I fell asleep right before dinner today at about 4:30 for only like 5 minutes or 10.
Yeah. Well, I didn't compare Robert Crumb to Dell Comics this week.
So then you wake up and then you try to remember, like, where was I in this thing? So I
put on a video about Machu Picchu. Done that before. I'm like, oh, let me scroll back to where. Oh, I don't remember this. I'll have to go back. Yeah, Robert Crumb. Where do you put him on your list? You're blaspheming?
You be blaspheming in here.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for somebody to cut that line out of context.
Ah, that's right. There was a who that was from last week. I remember it now.
Mm-hmm.
They could do a Star Wars.
Robert Crumb is now the Dell comic.
Yeah, they could do a Star Wars crossover and have Lucky Luke Skywalker.
Wait, don't laugh at his puns. Don't do it. It only encourages them.
No, wait. Don't give them any ideas.
Lucky Luke. I don't even know who Lucky Luke is. Who is Lucky Luke?
The fastest gun in the West, faster than his own shadow. It was written by It was created by a Belgian cartoonist named Belgian or French. I think it was Belgian because he worked at Maurice. Maurice de Bever. He signed Morris, and the stories were mostly written.
Maurice.
Yeah, and the majority of the classic stories were written by Goscinny, who was also the writer, the Asterix writer.
Very cartoony.
Comic Crack loved Lucky Luke and Asterix as a kid. I never saw any Asterix anywhere.
Matter of fact, in Europe, Asterix is not a comic; it's mainstream entertainment.
I can't remember the first place I saw Asterix mentioned.
I know I read about him in some book on comics, but I never saw any Asterix comics. It's like I know cartoonist Kayfabe just made a video about it, but
I may have actually seen a book that, like, at a public library on that when I was a kid, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you have the Smithsonian Book of Comics when you were a kid?
It was in the library. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one book on comics that was in every library.
Yeah, I would check that out and take it home, and then bring it back. And 2 weeks later, I'd check it out again and bring it back home again.
Cartoonist Kayfabe just did a video looking through it, but that was one of the, like I said, in I think it came out in 1979 or 1980. And that was before, like, there was hardly any collections of comics at all. And this had, like, old Batman, old Spirit, old Superman, all sorts of old stuff from, like, the 40s and 50s. And it was the only place you could see it. Like I said, every library had it. It was the only book on comics you could find there. I remember I loved that one as a kid. I have it on my shelf somewhere. I probably got it sometime in high school, but haven't looked at it in ages.
Not really related to that, but there was another book they had, and I have a copy of it now in the town library where I lived. Are you familiar with Richard Powers, who's mainly known as a science fiction artist that did a lot of covers? He did very surrealistic art style. Okay, but he did an illustrated version of King Kong that I loved. And I finally tracked down a copy of that a few years ago after I was talking to Mark Schultz about it, actually.
Our school library, your school library had Asterix. My library also had that was very cool was the Jim Steranko History of Comics.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
So that I got to read that when I was in junior high or high school.
I imagine, did they reinforce the binding of that in the library? Because I imagine,
what was that?
Did they, in their library copy, they had that? Did they, like, reinforce the binding?
I think so. They may put that plastic over it.
If you were to, like, put it in the library, it would probably get handled
because it was
a lot
paper.
Right.
They may put one of those library plastic bindings around it, but man, I loved it when I found that one. I actually have had. I've never gone back and reread it, but I got a copy of both of them in the early '90s. There must have been a warehouse find.
I only have the second one.
Let me pull it out. There's the second one. There must have been a warehouse find because it was in perfect shape.
Right. Yeah, that one's in a little better shape than the one I have.
One of my local comic shops got it in. And I was like, well, how much is this? And he was trying to look it up on his order form, and it wasn't there. He never ordered it. So he gave it to me for the cover the 1970s cover price of $6.
Yeah, well, for years and years, you could order all that stuff through Steranko's company that was called Super Graphics.
Ah. Here's what was next to it. I'm going to bring this over and show it to you just because.
What a juxtaposition there. Yeah.
Acme Novelty Library.
Right.
And this frustrates me because I don't like it. I mean, I love looking at it. I think
the stories are depressing.
But it's like Chris Ware leaves me cold.
Yeah, the stories are not the feel good hit of the summer at all. I mean, the design of the books is gorgeous.
It's beautiful. I mean, you say the stories are depressing, but I don't even know that. The stories don't affect me in any way. So it's kind of like I've always found Chris Ware very frustrating because this is a guy I should like. It's like everybody around Chris Ware, everybody you could like compare to Chris Ware, I like. But for some reason,
sure,
he leaves me. I don't know why. It has always bothered me. Because I should like Chris Ware.
I tried 4 pages, then gave up. I have a friend who says that you can only read Chris Ware when you're feeling great about the world. Otherwise, you'll want to kill yourself.
Even get that. Barry, who just won the MacArthur Genius Grant. Have you ever read? She used to be in the Village Voice. Ernie Pook's comic, I think was the name of it. One of my favorites. I like. She stopped making comics for years and years because she was part of the, she made her whole living off of independent newspapers. Her comic used to be right next to Life in Hell by
Matt Groening.
Matt Groening. They were like right next to each other in the Village Voice. So she was really big in sort of alternate newspapers. Mm-hmm. And then like by the early 2000s, her whole career just went away because alternate newspapers all folded. And she had to kind of reinvent herself and and she's kind of had a renaissance lately where they've been reprinting her old stuff.
Newspapers folded.
Yeah. And then reprinting her old stuff. And like I said, she won the MacArthur Genius Grant. So she's been working on books since then. But this is one of her older books. I always liked this.
A long time.
Yeah. It's a whole book of just her wacky drawings on cards. And then in the middle, they made them. I guess you could cut out your own version of the cards. Here they are all printed in color. So since this was just right next to it in my tall book section, I figured I'd pull it out and show it. And this is next to it in my tall book section too. A spirit picture disc. Have you ever seen this?
I don't think so.
Let me pull it out of its plastic so we can show it. Not that I have a record collection. But this is in the Spirit comic. There was, what's his name here? Ebony had a song called "Every Little Bug Has a Honey to Hug But Me," and I think they originally made the record. I don't even know when, in the 50s. Let's see if it's it's all 1987. This came out.
Was that put out through Kitchen Sink?
Think it was. I think so. Yeah, Ordinary Records is a division of Kitchen Sink Press.
Okay.
And it's got some Total time 24 minutes aside. Excerpts from the 1948 Spirit TV show.
Oh,
so it's got all of these Spirit TV. I guess it's like hold on. The Spirit picture disc. It explains it on the. I guess because it comes with no anything.
There's no sleeve.
In 1946, comics master Will Eisner introduced the words to the song "Every Little Bug" in his weekly The Spirit comic strip. They were featured in many stories. In 1947, composer Bill Haar set the words to music. Now, for the first time, "Every Little Bug" has been recorded by the Jonathan Christen and Friends 5 times, with promos from the 1948 Spirit TV show and original music. The art on the flip side of the disc was drawn especially for it by Eisner. The art on this side is from the original 1947 sheet music. Wow. So that's a Will Eisner original for this record.
Yeah, I'm looking at the credits on Discogs.
and this one, sheet music
Vintage
art.
Guitars by Bill Mumy.
No.
Yeah.
Bill Mumy.
Bill Mumy plays guitar on that album.
On a lot of comics-related songs through the years.
Yeah, it says Bill Mumy. There's credits on this too. Vintage Guitars, Blackbird McKnight, Smokin' Guitar.
Yeah, I don't know what the other guys are.
No.
Blackbird
Mike Kiefer, voice characterizations. The Beat Brothers.
Blackbird McKnight was in Funkadelic.
Parliament?
Yeah, Parliament Funkadelic, yeah.
But I guess if you want this piece of Will Eisner Spirit art, you can only get it on this picture disc.
I imagine that comes at a pretty penny these days too.
I have no idea. I've never heard anyone mention it all the years I've had it.
First time I've seen it. I may have seen a mention of it in a book and not realized it, but it's the first time I'd actually seen one.
Yeah. Like I probably bought this back in 1987 just on a lark, and it wasn't cheap either. I imagine it went for like $20 in 1987.
Yeah, I remember having an uncut.
And it might be the only record I had.
I had an uncut card sheet of Eisner's cards all printed on one that was signed, and I still have that in the closet somewhere.
I've got in one of my portfolios. I've got some uncut like Marvel Masterworks card sheets from way back when.
Yeah, the Ordinary Records has another album here, which is Omaha the Cat Dancer soundtrack.
That's interesting. I had no idea anything like that even existed.
But there seems to be.
I guess they were making records.
Let me see. Let me see if I can. Kate Worley.
No.
Kate Worley sings.
Kate Worley, the writer, right? Or was she the artist?
Writer, and she sings and plays guitar on the album. Reed Waller.
He's the artist, right?
Yeah, Nate Buckland. Most of these guys seem to be session musicians. David Emerson.
Yeah, I imagine Michael Jackson wasn't playing on the Omaha the Cat Dancer album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these guys are probably session musicians, or they just played local gigs or something, because they don't have more credits.
I know there was a CD that was released that tied in Mark Schultz's Xenozoic series that had some songs that are called Songs from the Xenozoic Age.
Have you guys ever heard the Justice League of America album? You can find it on YouTube these days. But I got a copy of it like in the 90s, and I think it was from the 70s, called The Role of the Justice League of America. And it was like stories. It was stories and themes. It was like Metamorpho they gave us theme song to, and then did a little Metamorpho story. And the Justice League had their own theme song too. And the funny thing about the Justice League theme song as they do a roll call where they go, Superman, here. And they go, Batman, here. Like he's got this, Brooklyn accent. And then I guess they, it wasn't in the budget to hire a woman because they go Wonder Woman and you hear a guy go, here. Up high as he can. It's obviously a guy's voice saying hi as here as high as he can. It's just like the funniest thing. Plastic Man, there's another one who's got a theme song. So you didn't know there was a Metamorpho theme song. Strong as iron and homely as sin. Metamorpho.
No, I had no idea. Wow.
I can't find that Xenozoic. I can find that Xenozoic album that Scott was talking about, but I found something else.
Yeah.
A Quebec speed metal band called Ultra Raptor.
I've heard of that.
And they have an album called also their self-titled album is Xenozoic themed. The tracks are called Highways of Ice, Raptor Riders, Under the Claw, Cyber Fortress, and Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. There's a note here that says Xenozoic version, 2 print runs, the first 100 copies of a type on the first track. Another 100 comics has been released once the first 100 sold out. Yeah, it's an EP. It's available. Well, it's also available on MP3, so they probably have a website or something.
I don't know what genre of music other than just generic rock or indie rock, but there's actually a band called Kaluta, and they got Mike Kaluta to do their album cover.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kaluta.
Let's see now. Well, I can't find a band called Kaluta, but I can find Kaluta art on 7 albums between 1973 and 2001.
I can tell you most of the album covers he did without even looking at that. He did one for something that had to do with the pirates in the.
Yeah, Lenny White presents the adventures of Astral Pirates.
And there was a fold out in the middle of that he did the artwork for too. So he did that.
It's jazz fusion.
He did the original artwork that was done for the Monster Mash.
Yes, Bobby Pickett and the Crypt Kickers.
He did Danzig 4.
He
did Black Aria also from Danzig. And he did the artwork for 2 Black Sabbath tribute albums that were called NIB Volumes 1 and 2.
Yep.
He knows his Mike Kaluta album covers.
Yeah, there's also something.
I know about Mike Kaluta, period.
There's also something here called Auburn Slip by Eve to Adam.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite Mike Kaluta comic covers?
All of them. I mean,
just name a few.
Some are better than others. There's one I like a lot. This is obscure in terms of Mike Kaluta stuff, but he did one for the Books of Magic series that Dark Horse did.
Yeah,
where there's a Spitfire flying over a map of England, and from World War II, and it's got a Union Jack on it. I like that one a lot. One of my favorite covers he did, well, actually, it wasn't for a comic; it was for a portfolio of poetry.
Okay,
it's called Bird of Death, and it's got this really gothic-looking kind of a skull with a wing motif, and Mike always does good wings. It's just one of his trademark things. But I love that one a whole lot. God, there's so many. I mean, he has done so many covers over the years.
I know. There's no collection of them, is there?
No, there was supposed to be a book that's lingered around in development hell for years that was titled Big Book of Kaluta. It was at Dark Horse at one time. I think it may have got transferred over to IDW, but even Mike doesn't know what the status of that is now and if it's ever going to be published or not.
For some reason, that King Conan cover that he did,
Prince is Dead.
Yeah, that pops into my mind immediately, and it pops into a lot of people's minds.
We're great. he's just done so much stuff over the years. It's like, where do you even start?
Yeah, I remember. Was it I Vampire? He did covers for.
He did a few of those.
Right in the early '80s, I think. I remember liking some of those too.
Of course,
House of Mystery.
Yeah, it's House of Mystery. And of course, the iconic one for Shadow #1.
Yeah. That one. That one is.
How old is Kaluta now?
Early 70s.
We're all getting older and older.
Yeah, none of us are getting any younger. Actually, it was really cool because I've known Charles Vest for years. And Charles and Mike used to be roommates back in the early 80s, late 70s, in New York City. And I went to a convention with Charles in Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And so we're driving back home. It's like, you want to go visit Mike Kaluta? And I'm like, is the Pope Catholic? So we went to Mike's place, stayed there overnight. This is back when we lived, a couple blocks off Broadway. And I was like a kid in a candy store. Here's this original art all over the place. He's got a book collection that's, is bigger than, some libraries I've been in. It was just so hard to go to sleep in there just because there's so much visual stimulus. And I still, to this day, I'm jealous of myself. I can't believe that actually happened. So that was a lot of fun.
He was like Bart Simpson with his clown bed. Can't sleep, clown will kill me.
Can't sleep. There's too much stuff to look at.
Yeah, the Mike Kaluta paintings will eat me.
Actually, it's funny enough, not there, but at Charles's studio, I saw one of the paintings that Mike did for a J.R.R. Tolkien calendar. It's called Nicholas Draws the Bow of Galadriel. And to see that, the original of it, it's stunning. It's like, wow. That's a nice piece of artwork, man. Yeah.
Galadriel. Yeah, because I love books about comic book covers.
Right.
If there's any kind of coffee table book that I'm a sucker for, it's any book on comic book covers.
And it's funny. Go ahead.
I was like, even ones I'm not necessarily interested in. Like I bought. They put out a few years ago. Remember 52, the weekly series by DC.
Yeah.
I can't even remember who did the covers for them. J.G. Jones, is it? Oh, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
But anyway, some guy did. He did a new cover each week for that book, and they put them out in its own little hardcover book. I bought that one just because it was cool. J.G. Jones, I think that's who did it. I'm gonna have to look.
But there's so many artists that you could do compilations like that of the years that they should do compilations of, but they're probably not going to.
Right.
Like Mike Zeck, I love to have a collection of Mike Zeck covers because there was a time when Zeck was doing nothing but covers.
Right.
And he was the first Captain America art I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I was buying Captain America in those days.
Such a dynamic style. That's probably what won me over to American comics, was seeing Mike Zeck on Captain America.
Yeah. I always liked Mike Zeck, but he was never one of my favorites just because sometimes I found the way he drew faces to be weird. I don't know how to describe it, but his faces were kind of like moon faces somehow. And every now and then that would distract me. But other than that, I liked him. Like his...
Was it the way that characters used to grimace?
Yeah. It made them... It kind of made their faces, instead of being like round in the front, they were kind of like weird. That weird made them like concave in the front. I had a hard time describing how... That used to like take me out of it sometimes. That's the only criticism I have of him, really, is sometimes I didn't like his faces, but he did a lot of nice covers.
Yeah, but he had such great camera angles.
Yeah.
Especially because Captain America would jump from roof to roof.
Right. Those underneath shots of Cap going across.
Yeah. And even when he's on the ground, you would kind of tilt the ground a little bit just so it wasn't completely flat.
Right.
And his Master of Kung Fu covers, which we were just looking at a couple weeks ago, of course, were really good. Mm-hmm. Always liked them. He was the first, I think he was on Master of Kung Fu when I first started buying it off the rack. I'd had some old ones with like maybe a Starlin and a Galassi, some Starlin and Galassi stuff, but that was before my time. When I first noticed it on the racks weekly, I think Zek was the artist. That's when I started buying it. Somewhere in the 80s, probably. Issue 80s.
Yeah, I think that my first Master of Kung Fu was also Mike Zek. Because I remember they infiltrated a cult leader called Sam Is That, and I think that was drawn by Zek. Yeah, because Blackjack Tar kind of looked like Dum Dum Dugan because of the mustache.
He did. He was the black-haired version of Dum Dum Dugan.
Yeah.
Blackjack Tar. Yeah, Master of Kung Fu was a solid book in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm. Paul Galassi is another artist that they could do a cover compilation on, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially the painted stuff like Six from Sirius.
Right. A lot of good stuff. Good Captain America roof jumps always need to look old style parkour. Yeah, comparing it to DD or any of the rooftop hero. You don't see Cap climbing up roofs. He jumps up them.
Yeah.
So now we're going to have Peter Parkour.
Parkour. That reminded me of the Office cold open with them parkouring. Jumping on desks. Yeah, Daredevil was a bad comic for a long time.
I don't have much Daredevil at all.
I've never been very curious about what went on before Frank Miller.
I had some of that. I started buying Daredevil monthly. Pardon me, it was bi-monthly, right before Frank Miller took over. Probably I think 157 was Miller's first Daredevil, right?
158.
158.
Yeah, well, I
probably started buying it like monthly, like at 153, maybe, let's say. Mm-hmm. But I had a whole bunch of back issues because like I was lucky enough to have a friend who was about 2 years older than me and would always tell me, and once again, it was the old Kid Network. You'd hear some kid 2 streets away was selling comics, and you'd go over and buy some comics for a nickel or whatever, a nickel a piece. And my friend would always tell me what the good ones were. And I think he was a Daredevil fan. So he would always hook me up with the Daredevils. So I had so it's like my first Daredevils were actually a few years old. And so I'd pick up like the first Angar, the Screamer, which was just weird. Trying to figure out that character as a kid. Do you know him at all?
No.
Angar the Screamer?
He appeared in the Thanos storyline, that side quest with Daredevil that didn't make much sense towards the overall storyline.
Well, he was an early 70s character who was basically a hippie who would scream and you'd go on an acid trip. That was his superpower. Now, they didn't say it was an acid trip, and I didn't know what an acid trip was when I was 10 or 11, but that's what it was. And I could kind of figure it out in context, but I was just like, wow, this is weird.
Have you ever
around issue right after Daredevil 100 was when I picked. So it's like I had Daredevil like maybe 101 to like 125. But they were all like 2 or 3 years old by that point. Mm-hmm. So you could see why I wasn't in any rush to pick up Daredevil. Because I had these good, 25 issues worth of Daredevil, and I read them, and I kind of liked them. They were kind of fun. But they weren't that good. And it was like the one Daredevil character I liked back then was a guy called Torpedo, who was nobody. I think he was like another assistant DA who found this costume that made him fly. And it was a cool costume. That was pretty much the only reason I liked him, was the Torpedo costume was really cool.
Well, Torpedo mostly appeared on Rom. He was kind of Rom's sidekick for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I read Rom, and I don't even remember that.
Never read Rom, but always wanted.
That was before Rom got cool, because Rom had a decided shift in the type of stories when they introduced the female dire wraiths.
Okay.
And when they killed Torpedo. But he appeared a lot in the 20s through the 40s.
Yeah, I was reading all those, but man, I actually got rid of my ROMs. Now I kind of wish I had them. Not that I'd ever read them. So it's like that. Sometimes like, oh, I wish I had those ROMs. I'm like, no, I'll never read them.
That would have
but
been
ROM was always a solid comic. It was not the greatest comic on the racks. It was far from the worst comic on the rack. So it was like, I started picking it up when one of my favorite late 70s heroes, Jack of Hearts, showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like around issue 15 or 18, somewhere around there. And the X-Men showed up. One of the earliest X-Men crossovers was in ROM. So I started picking up ROM in the teens. I think Sal Buscema was drawing it.
It was
solid.
There was an X-Men crossover in Micronauts too.
They had a mini series.
Probably would have been within a couple years or so of each other.
Torpedo showed up against Spider-Woman too. Okay, I read some. Torpedo got a rating.
The villain as Torpedo.
Yeah, yes. Torpedo was a villain at first, and then the assistant DA in Daredevil found the costume and became the hero Torpedo.
And that's the one who became Rom. But then they did a retcon that the costumes were designed by the dire wraiths. There were there was a group of villains called the Rocketeers, and they were supposed to be wraiths in disguise. Yeah, and in New Warriors it was Turbo. Turbo got the costume.
Turbo
She started appearing in the late 20s. And then I wasn't reading by then, but I know that there was a big storyline with the dire wraiths around the 60s and 70s before the comic got canceled.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember the storyline in any of those. Well, I only read them once as they came. It wasn't a comic I reread, so I think I only read them once and then never again. So they didn't stick. But I remember liking them. I think I only still have the X-Men and the Jack of Hearts issue on my shelf.
They should have done a CD-ROM publication of that book.
Yeah, but the other
it'd have been perfect.
Wait,
it was
Scott.
Perfect. Come on,
Don't laugh at him, Paolo. You just encourage him. But anyway. The other character I liked from those Daredevil. It's funny. I didn't like Daredevil. Daredevil was not the least bit interesting until Frank Miller came along. Mm-hmm. The other Daredevil character I liked was Copperhead. Just because he looked cool. He had a trench coat. He's an old 50s. He had a trench coat and a hat. And this, I was going to say gold mask, but I assume it was supposed to be a copper mask. He just looked cool. Once again, that was like the only other Daredevil issue. I liked Torpedo. I liked Copperhead. And other than that, there wasn't
Copperhead.
There are very
few. Yeah, there are very few villains from Daredevil pre-Miller that are used. Bullseye's one, although he was very close to Miller. And then it's Gladiator, the Owl. They insist on bringing back the Jester every couple of years, and we have absolutely no patience for him.
The Owl was always annoying because he couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And Gladiator was always annoying because it was before healing factors were invented. So he had these two buzzsaws on his wrists that he couldn't cut anyone with. Because you're not allowed to cut anyone. That's why I say... the healing factor was the greatest invention in comics, the greatest superpower invention in comics of the last 50 years. Just because it allowed everybody to use their weapons with no consequences. Because before, it always annoyed me that the Valkyrie in Defenders, I liked the Defenders. I was by the Defenders. I liked the Valkyrie, but she was always saying, "You only deserve the flat of my blade." So her blade was basically a club, her sword, because she couldn't.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to, run people through with a sword. You're not allowed to chop off people's arms with a sword,
unless they needed to cut through very thick metal.
Yeah, she was useless. That sword was just trying to carry a sword she can't use. It's like, you need to get out of a room. I'll hack my way through the door, and you're like, oh great, finally the sword can cut something. But once, healing factors were invented, and it took a while. It's like Wolverine's early healing factor was slow. It wasn't instantaneous like it became in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like all those comics in the 90s are impossible without healing factors. Because it's like a Wolverine Sabretooth fight is impossible without both of them having healing factors.
Yeah, because their first couple of fights, they're interesting. They cut each other and they suffer through it. But after that, it was just like a wrestling match. It's like
once the healing factors became instantaneous, it was just like,
then they turned into Looney Tunes at that point.
Yeah, it was Looney Tunes, exactly. But
because
at least
there was one thing about the Claremont. About the Claremont mutant. There was a thing about the Claremont's mutants, in that he always explained how the powers worked and how taxing it was for everybody to use their powers. And then after a while, especially when Mark Silvestri started drawing, he stopped explaining, and the powers were just used. No problem. I mean, they used to explain that Storm had to manipulate weather patterns over an area of several square miles in order to produce an effect. And now, hurl bolt of lightning.
Right. She used to say, "I'm not Thor. I can't just override all the weather." That was one of the explanations you got all the time.
And Nightcrawler got tired of doing a series of jumps, or he couldn't jump very far. Right. But now they need, Nightcrawler, transport 20 people to the other side of the planet.
Right. That's what I call powers creep. That's my term for that, where when you're writing a superhero comic, the most interesting thing about a superhero comic is, of course, their powers. You're reading Spider-Man because he's got webs and can walk up a wall and super strength. That's what makes superheroes interesting. So when you have to come up with a superhero story, you're the writer, you got to come up with a new story. That's not easy. What an easy thing to do is kind of change their power a little. So what happens over time is powers creep happens. You give them a little bit more power, a little bit more power, a little bit more power. Then 5 years later, it's a completely different character who can heal instantaneously and can teleport all the way across the world with 20 people with him.
And you just paint him blue and call him Dr. Manhattan at that point.
Yeah. And then what has to happen? Some guy says we have to bring him back to basics and strip away all the extraneous, and they bring the character back to the way he was originally. So and then powers creep happens again.
10 years ago, said no.
What do we got? Hangar did show up. Who's Hangar?
It's Angar.
Oh, Angar the Screamer, right?
Angar's,
how did they spell it like A? They didn't spell
it was just Angar. It was just Angar. Angar.
Okay, it was just anger, but they pronounced, or was it Angar? I can't remember.
Angar.
Yeah,
and that was supposed to be his real name, David Angar.
Right. Man, I puzzled over that guy for the longest time when I was 10 or 12. I was just like, what is this?
Sometimes when they use a part of their name as their code name, do you remember a guy who showed up in Marvel Team Up, Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, called Basilisk?
Yes.
His real name, Basil Elks.
I don't remember that.
Oh, that's like when you'd have the devil show up in the story, and his name was Lou Cipher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, really?
I always liked the basilisk in that. I liked him because he looked cool, and that Marvel team up, Marvel 2-in-1 crossover with the Thing in Spider-Man. It was just 2 issues back when crossovers were just 2 issues, and the basilisk was the villain in it. That's what made me like him. And for some reason, I always have a soft spot for villains who shoot beams out of their eyes.
Yeah.
I just think that's a cool visual thing. Because the heroes hardly ever shoot beams out. Even when they can, they don't do it too much. Well, the basilisk,
it's Cyclops, it's Cyclops and it's the Vision.
Right. And like the Vision was always confusing because he shot beams out of his eyes and out of his little gem. It was like, well, which one do you use? What's he doing? Lou Cipher. What was the name of that movie with Lou Cipher in it? The New Orleans one.
That name has been used hundreds of times in different.
Yeah, stories. I know, but that's the one I remember it from because that was the mainstream one.
No idea.
With what's her name, Lisa Bonet. Came out like right after she left the Cosby Show, I think, and it was really controversial because she was naked in it or something.
Something with the serpent in the title?
Maybe. I can't even remember. I'm old.
Don't feel bad. But I do remember there was a movie that came out that had a lot of controversy in it, and she was in it.
Yeah. I remember it took place, I think, in New Orleans, too, but that's about it. So, I just got the latest Mile High Comics mailing list. Last chance for free comic book day variants. I think I can pass on that. No, it's not Serpent in the Rainbow. That was the one that took place down in the islands.
Okay.
I'm going to have to look it up now, aren't I?
That's the one. That's the title I was thinking about, was Serpent in the Rainbow.
Paolo, look it up on IMDb. Lisa Bonet movies from the late 80s.
Take a look here.
Horror movie. Can't remember who else. But Lou Cipher was the villain, and you weren't supposed to know it was Lucifer. And everybody figured it out. What was that? Angel Heart?
Angel Heart.
Yeah, that's it. Angel Heart. There we go. Angel Heart. That was a popular movie for a while. Everybody liked it.
I don't think I've ever actually seen it. I've seen part of it, but not the whole thing.
I remember it being solid. I remember, going, oh, that was okay.
It's funny. I have a list that I keep on IMDb of all the movies that I've watched the entire way through. But if I included ones I've only seen parts of, that list would be 10 times bigger.
Epiphany Proudfoot? That was her name in the movie?
What was it?
Epiphany Proudfoot.
Yeah, there's a good name, huh?
That's a Hobbit name.
Boobs. Yeah, that's why it was controversial. Boobs. Epiphany Proudfoot. Lou Cipher. Who played Lou Cipher?
Who played Lou Cipher? De Niro.
De Niro? Ah, okay. And it's funny. I'm sitting here in my mind going back over all those old Daredevils.
Yeah.
And like Angar the Screamer was like in the early 100s. I think Copperhead was in the early 120s. I think Torpedo was in the 120s. And like so much, the rest of it is just, Man Bull was in there too. He was a cool villain. But so much of it is just blank. It's like, what was going on? I'm going to have to go look. I think I still have those issues. I'm going to have to go look. Man Bull, I always liked Man Bull too because I can't remember who was but he drew him really ugly. Was Gene Colan drawing? I don't even think Gene Colan was drawing those issues, but Man Bull was especially ugly, and I liked that. Much like this old Atlas comics with all the ugly people in it. I liked the ugly Man Bull with his big old horns.
Stiltman. Well, Stiltman is back from the beginning. He's still from the Stanley era, and yeah, everybody in the Stanley era was ridiculous. That's why number 7 is so important because they have him against the Submariner.
Right.
Because apart from that, it was the Matador and the Owl.
And the blank, right. The Matador. But I always found Stiltman the funniest because, first of all, he's good visually. But his whole superpower is he's too tall to fight. It's like, superpower.
Allow me to get away from you. You didn't get away from me. You're just up there. What are you?
Like, I can't fight you. You're too tall. That's his whole superpower. And then it's like, from then on in, it's like every few years, somebody tries to make they either treat him as a comedy villain, or they try to make him cool. Those are the two approaches every writer since Stan Lee has had with the Stiltman. Because it's just such a goofy. It's like it's too. I can remember we were speaking of the Champions before. That's one. I think there was a True Believers of one of the Champions issue that the Stiltman was in. That's why I read it recently, because it's like they tried to make him dangerous in the Champions. It's like, it takes the entire Champions to take the Stiltman. And how do they always defeat the Stiltman? They make him short. They knock him down. They cut out his leg. It's like, you're too tall
or you
to
can
fight.
do it like the Punisher. Or you can do it like the Punisher and you fire a bazooka at his crotch.
Yeah. That's one of the things I always hated about team superhero books is you put all these people together and their IQ collectively drops at least 60, 70 points.
Yeah. Unless you're Batman, then you become a super genius.
Right.
Yeah, no. You become a super genius, everybody else becomes ineffective, even if they're Superman.
Right.
Yeah. So I was always said if Superman had Batman's brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Batman's not so smart in his own comic. He can't figure out how to beat the Joker. Joker keeps coming back. He can't figure out how to take out Killer Croc in his own comic. And the JLA takes out an army of Martians. You're like, Killer Croc?
Or vice versa sometimes. Like you was talking about, you have a certain villain, and for whatever reason, a whole team of supervillains can't take him out, but then this other person shows up randomly and just, I'm like, this makes no sense.
I think team books it's tough to write team books, and it's tough to do a team fight unless you're George Perez. And just like drawing
he just draws everybody at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, where's Waldo? Where's, such and such?
Yeah. There's an issue of the Avengers back in the Shooter era when Hank Pym goes nuts and he reverts back to Ant-Man and he manages to defeat the Avengers in 2 pages.
Right.
And then the Wasp shows up and defeats him by knocking him out of his flying ant.
That's what it.
No, especially because he defeats Wonder Man with ants.
That's what I read. I read part of a DC cross Villains United. Was it? Well, I on a lark a few years ago, I read one of these DC crossovers where the villains defeated all the heroes. It may have been Villains. I can't even remember the name of it. But it was one of those where it's like all of a sudden the villains get mean and effective and take out all the heroes, except they don't actually kill them. So that by the end they're just going to come back at the end. It's kind of like they're all meaner and ruthless, but it's like, but you didn't actually kill anybody. So it's kind of like I just always hated stories like that, where the whole super team is defeated in the very beginning of the story, and you're like, but they're all just out back waiting for the end of the story to come back and kick your ass.
Another thing about super team hero books, and this is more covers than anything else. You may have seen my Facebook post about this, but like there are all these covers where you have 20, 30 more members of a superhero team bursting out in the same direction, flying or running wherever they're going. What were they all doing like 2 seconds ago, all clustered together?
Fighting rocks. Yeah. Like I said, my LCS owner pointed out, like last year, I think it was, how many DC comic covers there were.
Right.
With their heroes gathered together with rocks, or like rocks flying past them, or in space with rock, or their rubble all around them. And he was like, "Oh, He's like the biggest enemy to the JLA is rocks. But speaking of Man Bull, who I mentioned before, that just jogged my memory. The Marvel super villain team I want to make is the Headbangers. Marvel has they have enough villains right now whose main power it is that they bash you with their head. We've got Man Bull, who I mentioned before. He's got those big horns he bashes you with. We've got Bulldozer from the Wrecking Crew. His main power is he bashes you with his head. We've got Ramrod from Spider-Man, whose whole power was he's a human ramrod. He bashes you with his head. We've got the Rhino, of course, from Spider-Man, whose whole power is he runs into you with his head. And then we've got Hammerhead. I just found out recently there was a Hammerhead before the Spider-Man, Dick Tracy Hammerhead. Right. And who bashes you with his head. See, Juggernaut, I was thinking about throwing Juggernaut in there, but Juggernaut is really more of a strong guy. He doesn't bash you with his head exclusively.
Yeah, visually, I was actually thinking more about Rhino now that you bring it up.
Right. Juggernaut more like beats you up anyway. Juggernaut will punch you as soon as he'll bash you with his head.
Ooh, so I just remember the one from the Zodiac in the Avengers when Ares tries to take over the Zodiac from Taurus, saying he's an ineffective leader. And what do they do? What do the Bull and the Ram do against? They run against each other to bash their heads together.
So but
the thing is, those guys are normal humans. They're just wearing costumes. What are they doing?
They're not normal humans, but they're just humans.
No, they're pretty. Right. And one of them is supposed to be a millionaire. What's he doing?
Right.
We may have to throw Juggernaut into the Headbangers just for the sales, because he's the most popular of them. But I'm still not sure he's a Headbanger as the other ones, But we can put that into their characters.
It's funny you brought this up because
if
you were a fly on the wall and you could record a writing session of a writing team, both with guys working on superhero books and comics, and with professional wrestling, and you just took the names out to protect the guilty, I bet you couldn't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, I believe it.
The Headbangers.
Actually, the Headbangers could be a great gimmick for a tag team on the WWE.
Well, yeah.
The only problem is human beings can't really bash their heads together, as you pointed out. So they'll just have to do
not more than about twice, maybe. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's wrestling. They don't actually do anything.
Right, but don't say that because that's the next subgenre of a metal reference that DC is going to use for their next Batman arc. Which hey, we've used regular metal, we use death metal. What are we going to use now?
Did they use speed metal just this week?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Although they might do a speed metal thing with the Flash.
I think they may have. I saw that. I'll have to look it up.
And probably they're going to do a crossover Doom Patrol and call it Doom Metal. Yeah. But I mean,
don't laugh at his puns. Stop it. You're bad influence, pal.
I actually should start charging DC just to give them story ideas. All this is copyrighted, by the way.
Okay. I don't think those are story ideas. I think those are just puns.
I mean, seriously, I noticed that, what's next? I mean, you're just picking random catchphrases out of a jar.
That's what I think the Japanese do. That's how they got Full Metal Alchemist. Where else does that come?
Full Metal Jacket and alchemy.
They like certain English words and they put them together.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, you should see the names of car special editions in Japan, especially from Suzuki.
Yeah.
They have the weirdest names.
Like
there was a van in the Japanese market called Mazda Bongo Brawny.
Bongo Brawny?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're rolling up on 9 o'clock. So we should end our live show.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anybody have any thoughts to end on? Because I don't. Except the headbangers.
Well, we'll let Scott finish with a couple more puns, and then.
You'll have to give me a subject, and I'll make a pun on it.
Well, we'll wait till next week. I'm sure he'll pun again.
Yes. Should be locked up in a penitentiary.
Yes. Are you going to punish us?
After I pontificate upon it, and then you can lock me up in a penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can have Shakespeare show up and say, "Get thee to a punnery."
All right. So on that note, we'll say goodbye. We'll say good night to our 4 live fans.
We still have 4 people. Amazing.
All righty. You guys have a good one.
Bye.
Catch you next week.
Goodbye.
Have a good night, Comic Crack.